Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome. It's 3 o'clock. This is at GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me in the next hour, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also former Labour Party advisor Matthew Laza. In a few moments' time, I'll be mucking the week. And, of course, we've got so many things going on. We've had 2 weeks of Labour government. Small boat crossings continue to rise, and Trump had a brush with death. We get to hear him on his first ever conference afterwards. Former MP Conservative MP Miriam Cates will also be joining me live for the political spotlight. And we'll be talking about the Tory party's demise. I mean, can they even get it together? Are they even relevant? Then, my difficult conversation this week, Gemelin Artigas. Now, she was homeless and abandoned in London, but now she's rebuilt her life and is thriving as an online entrepreneur. Can't wait to hear all the tips. But before we get started, let's get your latest news with Tamsin Roberts.
Nana, thanks very much and good afternoon from the GB Newsroom. It's just after 3 o'clock. Passengers continue to face disruption at airports as airlines struggle from the fallout from yesterday's global IT outage. Flight delays are persisting as airports and other businesses slowly get back online. It comes as thousands of families start their holidays as schools break up for the summer. Banks, supermarkets, most GP surgeries and even major TV and radio broadcasters were among many others who were also knocked offline yesterday. The glitches were caused by a security update deployed by a company called CrowdStrike, which affected users of Microsoft Windows software. A yacht has been seized in the English Channel carrying a group of migrants trying to cross illegally from France. Footage obtained exclusively by GBNews shows the 18-foot yacht as it was towed into Dover's harbour by the Border Force. Our producer counted 86 migrants disembarking from the force's vessel. It comes as hundreds of other migrants launch from the beaches of northern France in small boats, the third busy day of illegal crossings this week. Police in South Gloucestershire are appealing for help in the search for a prisoner who escaped from HMP Leyhill yesterday. Gary Rutham, who's 42, was serving sentences for driving, robbery and burglary offences. He was last seen just before 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon and was wearing a dark Nike polo shirt, dark jogging bottoms and black trainers. Police say he should not be approached and anyone with information should contact them or Crime Stoppers. Meanwhile, a man who escaped from a West London prison while being treated in hospital has been recaptured. Graham Gom, who's 63, had been on remand for burglary offences at Wormwood Scrubs, but he absconded on Thursday after being taken to Hammersmith Hospital. He was arrested in South West London at around 8:30 this morning. In the US, reports suggest Nancy Pelosi has told colleagues she'd prefer a competitive process to find a replacement for President Biden if he drops out. The former House Speaker is understood to have pushed for an open primary instead of directly nominating Vice President Kamala Harris. That could see several candidates from within the Democratic Party compete for the chance to face Donald Trump, with just 107 days until the election. It comes as President Biden faces growing pressure to stand aside amid dwindling poll ratings. Pay increases in the public sector could cost around £10 billion, which is believed to be more than the government had forecast. Independent pay review bodies are reportedly set to recommend pay rises of 5.5% for teachers and NHS staff. But schools and hospitals are unlikely to be able to meet the increase with their existing budgets without making cuts. It could represent a significant challenge for Rachel Reeves's first budget after promising to clamp down on borrowing and ruling out a string of tax rises during the election campaign. The Home Secretary says violent disorder that erupted on the streets of Leeds was audacious criminality. 5 people have been arrested in connection with the angry scenes in the Hare Hills area on Thursday. Vehicles were set on fire while a police car was overturned. The riots are believed to be linked to a case involving local children who were taken into care. Yvette Cooper says those responsible will be brought to justice.
Been talking to West Yorkshire police officers and also local community leaders about the action they're now taking in response to those unacceptable scenes of disorder and criminality that we saw last night. The community is working very closely together in response to what was a local child protection incident, but it's really important that the community can feel safe on the streets and also that the perpetrators feel the full force of the law.
6-time world snooker champion Ray Reardon has died at the age of 91. The Welshman dominated the sport in the 1970s and was widely regarded as one of the greatest snooker players of all time. Fellow snooker champion Jimmy White has paid tribute to his friend, describing him as a total class act. Highs of 26 or 27 degrees have been forecast for some parts of the UK next week, with the weather to improve for the start of the summer holidays. That's as clouds and cooler conditions have returned this weekend after the hottest day of the year so far yesterday. The Met Office says temperatures reached 31.9 degrees in central London, with many escaping the city for a dip at the beach. But heavy rain and bursts of thunder are forecast for Wales and southwest England today. Well, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tamsin Roberts. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Tamsin. It's fast approaching 7 minutes after 3 o'clock. If you just tuned in, welcome on board. I'm Nana Akua, and it's time to mark the week, and what a busy one it's been. Trump said that God alone saved his life. I mean, whatever it was, he was incredibly lucky, and Nigel Farage went to see him. Can this one picture, though, alter the course of history? Here in the UK, week 2 of a Labour government. At the start of the week, Sir Keir Starmer shelved a legal crackdown on foreign workers amidst the biggest rise in population for 75 years in England and Wales, that's since 1949. But by Wednesday, the focus was on housing and building 1.5 million new homes. But that'll have very little impact if immigration continues the way it is. And in the King's speech on Thursday, the return of big state Britain was solidified. Nationalisation, new rights for workers and more powers to unions and extra rights for tenants.
My government will seek to strengthen the border and make streets safer. A bill will be introduced to modernise the asylum and immigration system, establishing a new border security command and delivering enhanced counter-terror powers to tackle organised immigration crime. Legislation will be brought forward to strengthen community policing, give the police greater powers to deal with antisocial behaviour and strengthen support for victims.
Sir Keir Starmer also upheld Rishi's smoking ban, and a total of 40 bills were proposed, the most since Tony Blair's government in 2005. And in his first speech as Prime Minister, Keir Starmer had promised that politics would tread more lightly on your lives. But listening to all of this, I'm concerned. I actually believe him. Public ownership of railways, a GB Energy, which it now transpired will not invest in renewables with the private sector. Instead, it would own and develop government-run energy projects such as wind and solar. The planning framework being ripped up with councils receiving top-down housing targets, and my biggest bugbear, bringing in restrictions on companies and landlords. By Friday, it reported that Roger Hallam, co-founder of Extinction Rebellion, had been jailed for 5 years for the group's antics on the M25. Serves him right. Perhaps he thought he was too middle class for jail. And we were all in the grips of the global IT outage. It's been a mucky old week. Right, coming up, I'll be making light of this week's top stories in Muck the Week and my roundtable discussion with my panellists. Then at 3:20, it's a hot topic. And in my roundtable discussion, we'll be discussing Labour's re-entering the Renters Reform Bill, and also they're planning to evict people and all the evictions. I don't know what I'm talking about. What's going on? It was my birthday yesterday. I didn't go out drinking. I didn't drink too much, just not as much sleep as normal. Then at 3:35, Dr. Rennie Hundenkamp will be live to discuss the latest medical breakthrough. A new drug tested on mice that could extend lifespan by 25%. My God, bring it to me. I'll take it. And joining me to shine a light on my political hot seat today, former Conservative MP Miriam Cates. As the Tory leadership battle is underway, what does the future hold for the Conservatives? She'll be discussing that at 3:45. Then, coming up in the next hour, as ever, a brilliant guest. Stay tuned for that. But tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Send me your thoughts, post your comments at gbnews.com/your say. So, joining me now, former Labour advisor, commentator Stella Chantakedu. Thank you. Former MP Simon Danchuk, property expert Ricardo Blanco. I know it's Richard Blanco, but it sounds so much better that way. And also Julie Ford, property commentator. Right, so I just want to start. So there's loads of time, so do get in touch. Give me your thoughts, gbnews.com/your say. But first of all, I want to get stuck into Labour. The Labour Party is for second week now. Stella, they're the second week. Are you pleased as punch the way they're going?
I'm extremely excited. I thought the King's speech went down incredibly well. It was a very, very ambitious set of legislations. As you said, 40 new bills, more than Tony Blair. I think there is a lot to look forward to. Not everything was included in there, of course, that Labour is going to achieve, but this is just the first 2 weeks. So amazing so far.
But what about his promise that big state's not going to oversee you? I mean, pretty much everything there was big state.
I don't think it's a big state.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so, because I think that a lot of the things that he's actually doing is he's taking away the barriers that have not allowed previous governments to deliver the growth that they have promised, especially when it comes to planning and growth and infrastructure. I think that's the biggest thing. And this is where you see the most ambitions in the bills. A lot of the other ones, I think they were treading lightly. There were a couple of ones that I thought it was his goodwill that he carried them over from Rishi Sunak's premiership, so the tobacco and vapes bill, for example, which I think should be welcomed by the Conservative side. But then the planning reforms, the rent reform bills, which we will be discussing later, more and more people are renting. 11 million people are renting across the UK, and a lot of them are feeling incredibly uncomfortable with the way that the renting market has been so far. So I think it is going to be broadly very welcome. I know you disagree with me.
You can't be kicked out of somebody else's house.
This is nanny state socialism. This is big government. That's exactly what it is. He said he wouldn't do it, but he's done it. 40 pieces of legislation, just completely overbearing on the British public. It's outrageous, and I don't care whether it's a Conservative government or a Labour government. It's outrageous that government interferes in people's lives in terms of banning them from smoking. I think that is really ridiculous. I feel really strongly about that. But, you know, we've got nationalisation back on the agenda.
To be fair to them, that did come from Rishi Sunak.
No, absolutely, and I think it's wrong for either of them. It shows you how centrist Rishi Sunak is. Shouldn't be interfering on smoking. But we've got nationalisation in terms of energy. We've got nationalisation of the railways. This is a step back into the 1970s. This isn't what the public will want. It's all going to end. It's all going to end in
policy.
tears.
The vast majority of the public want us to nationalise the railway.
You were much too young to remember British Rail, but I can remember British Rail, and it was run for the purpose of the staff, not for the purpose of the customers. And what we need to do is just have an efficient private sector running the trains. That's the reality.
Richard Blanco, what did you think of the speech overall and the proposals and how it affects you?
Well, I was very focused on the housing stuff, I guess, and I'm really pleased that they plan to build 1.5 million properties in the next 5 years. I'm worried as to how it's going to happen because essentially we rely on 10 main house builders in this country. The other issue was that, of course, we weren't sure if they were going to bring back the Renters Reform Bill. They have, in effect, brought it back as the Renters' Rights Bill, and in many ways landlords and the property community are quite pleased about that because there aren't too many shocks in there by the looks of things. The Renters Reform Bill that didn't quite make it through the last Parliament sort of annoyed tenants groups and landlords groups in equal measure, and that was actually a good sign because it meant it kind of towed a line between the two. But I don't think there were too many surprises in there. You know, most of what we saw was what was put forward in the manifesto, and I know a few civil servants who seem to be quite happy about what's happening. They feel that the approach has been quite collaborative, and we've heard this phrase, the adults are back in the room, of course. I've heard that from quite a few people as well.
Do you think, Julie?
I think 40 new bills is extremely ambitious, to be honest with you, and probably not achievable, and that's where they're going to let themselves down. They're going to get to a point where they can't actually deliver what they've promised. You know, the old adage, you know, over-promise and under-deliver, you know, that's what they're going to end up doing. They're going to end up under-delivering because they've over-promised. We don't need all this overhaul on legislation. We have legislation that is so antiquated, dating back to the 1700s, that we're still using today. What we need is an overhaul of legislation that's brought up to date for how society is, so that it actually can work with society, rather than keep bringing new legislation in that just requires somebody else to police it all the time.
Well, and also, if you bring in legislation without putting in the infrastructure for that legislation, then you've got quite a few problems on your hands. But we will discuss all of that. Give me your thoughts at gbnews.com/your say. We'd love to hear what you think. I mean, do you think that the Labour Party are going too quickly on this? Ricardo,
what on? Do you mean on housing or just generally?
All of this stuff they're chucking out, Great British Energy.
Trying to look competent,
you know, they're trying to look competent. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. And I'm thinking, how? How are you going to do all that?
They've got that big majority, haven't they, which means that they can be bold. And I agree with what was said earlier about the railways, actually. I think some big change is needed because there's a lot of unhappiness with it.
Who do you agree?
With the idea that nationalising it would be a benefit and would be, I think, generally popular. And it can be done easily without spending too much money because you can just bring those franchises back into public ownership.
I'd rather they nationalise water. I don't know about you, but I think we probably would agree that they need to nationalise water.
Utilities, yeah.
Nationalities? In my opinion, national utilities, something that is a public good that you cannot live without, should be nationalised.
Well, that's why I don't think they should be the railways.
It's too expensive. That's the problem with nationalising water. It would be too expensive.
Why would it be too expensive? Look, if it was me, I would fine the water companies every penny of their worth, and then I'd buy them back at £1. I mean, they have literally destroyed our waterways. They are are not worth anything. So I would fine them. They won't be able to afford the bill, and then I would take them in. That's how I do it. It wouldn't be that expensive. How's that expensive?
The enforcement isn't there.
No,
the legislation is there, but the enforcement isn't there. So we've come back round circle again. You know, the enforcement is there for a lot of things that are going wrong in the country, but nobody actually goes ahead and enforces them.
Right, well, let's see what you think. GBNews.com/you'll say. But first, there's still plenty of time to grab your chance to win £30,000 of the Great British Giveaway. That is our biggest cash prize of the year. What would you do with an extra 30 grand? Well, here's how you could win.
Don't miss your chance to win our Super Summer Giveaway. With your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, a medical breakthrough. My God, 25% more life. You could potentially live a lot longer. You could literally, potentially reverse your ageing. Really? Bring it to me. Bring it to me. I'll take it. I'll take all of it. But next, my hot topic, we'll continue my roundtable discussion with Labour's Renters' Bill. This is GB News.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
No one wants their child to be a fussy eater. But what is the secret to expanding your child's culinary horizons?
Is there a way to get kids away from the kids' menu, the fish fingers, the chips? Joining us now is the UK's top-selling author of children's cookery books, Annabelle Carmel. Good morning, Annabelle.
Thank you. So lovely to be here.
So, first of all, what's the issue with kids just having the traditional easy meals like fish fingers, you know, chips, beans?
It really depends if they've got preservatives in them, if they're full of salt. So I like to make them myself, and it's really easy. So I make my own chicken glazed nuggets, and super easy to make using proper pieces of chicken. You can cook them in the air fryer now, which is absolutely brilliant, so you need to fry them. And I think that it's really important that children grow up loving good food, because they make their minds up by the age of 5 what they like and what they don't like, and it's quite difficult to change their minds after that. But it's good to know that fussy eating is genetic. It's not to do with your cooking.
Oh,
that's right. Not to say that you can't do something about it. So I've written many, many books, and I have an app with 1,000 recipes on it, and a lot of how to make your own junk food, how to make your own isoles out of fresh fruit.
Yes.
How to make your own pizzas. I make the most amazing homemade pizza. I actually brought you some cookies here.
These are your books here. So my first cookbook, that's for how old children?
That's from the age of 1.
OK, and you've got a weaning one at the end, the baby one?
Yes, that's my very first book. I lost my first child. It was really sad. She died at the age of 3 months. And my second child was the world's worst eater. And I wrote that book as my legacy to Natasha, never thinking that it would start a whole career.
Oh, bless you.
It sold millions of copies, and it's so popular.
Is it quite pivotal and important that you introduce kids to the weaning stage, or, you know, how important?
It's very important, because the processed weaning food in pouches or jars, it's heated, so a lot of the vitamins aren't there anymore, so making your own is so easy and much cheaper.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
22 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. I'm Nana Akua. Now, Labour have pledged to ban no-fault evictions and end rental bidding wars. Now, yesterday, I spoke to barrister and writer Stephen Barrett to explain the legality behind the pledge.
We're creating a very hostile environment for landlords, particularly small or individual landlords. So if you think about it this way, you remove the right to no-fault, what we call now no-fault eviction. I don't really understand why we call it that. It sounds quite emotive. What really is going on is the landlord owns property, and then for reasons the landlord needs it back, and the tenant is given due notice. It's actually quite a long time, and then the tenant finds somewhere else to live. It wasn't obviously an emotional issue. It's existed, for a very long time. And it's simply part of recognizing that actually, when you're a tenant, you don't own the property. There's a difference between owning something and not owning it. But we're deliberately creating an environment. What concerns me, Nana, is that it's very hostile to small individual landlords, and it could create a situation in which they suffer real economic loss. But getting rid of no fault is really tricky, because people do it because generally financial circumstances have changed. So generally there'll be a financial flux. There'll be a change in the mortgage market that pushes mortgages up. So imagine if you rent out a property and you rent it out for X amount a month, and then something changes in the mortgage market, and all of a sudden it's substantially less than the amount that you're being charged on a mortgage as the landowner, right? You've now got a financial problem, and you probably want to take no-fault eviction possession of the property and sell it yourself, because the only other alternative is to default on the mortgage, and then the mortgage company, the bank, will sell the property. And believe me, even judges know, judges are not the most switched on to the practicalities of real life, but even judges know that banks sell things at a loss.
As a landlord, if I, say, for example, wanted to get rid of the tenant, for whatever reason, I can now no longer just get rid of them because I want to get rid of them and just put somebody else in.
So one of the other things that the Labour Party put in the King's Speech is that they're going to get rid of forfeiture. Now, I don't understand that as a lawyer, because you really can't, in practice, ever forfeit a non-commercial lease.
Because right now, I know that landlords are suffering with tenancies they don't want, simply because the court system is taking so long.
I think it's really important to note, only the decent landlords use the courts. You know, we do, sure, we have problems with dodgy landlords in this country. We have problems with, 20 people sleeping in a room in places. That's, never actually dealt with. There's no enforcement of that. Instead, what we get is extra rules to punish the good, effectively. The law-abiding will be pushed into a broken court system. And of course, they won't be, there's also there'll be alterations to how much you can get your legal costs back as well. So it's really just putting a massive financial burden onto landlords. Our country does not want, Nana, for laws. It's got reams of them. We're drowning in them. There are so many of them that it's almost endless. And we're writing them in a really bad way. Can I just say that Leasehold and Freehold Reform Act 2024, it's really badly drafted. It's got so many words. It's just ridiculous. To define one concept, you click on the section, and then the definition isn't in that section. So what is that section even for? Like, who drafted that? He's not, and a non-lawyer is not going to be able to read that document. It's just it's hostile to non-lawyers, and I think there's a constitutional duty to make our laws readable by everyone, including non-lawyers. And I think we're getting very close to a point where that's being breached. The other point I'd like to flag now is just that bit on forfeiture, that's very infantilizing, and we're living in a very infantilized state. We have driven through our law the concept of self-help. Okay, you can self-defend if you're attacked. You can self-help get your property back if somebody's taken it. And forfeiture is one of the ways that you self-help to get your flat or your house back. Taking away the ability of the citizen to defend themselves is very infantilizing. It makes us all children again.
That was Stephen Barrett talking to me yesterday about this renters reform, whatever they're now calling it, talking about forfeiture. Joining me, Richard Blanco, Julie Ford, also Simon Danchuk and Stella Chantakadu. I said it right again, have I?
You said it so well.
Right, so forfeiture, Julie, what is he talking about? What does it mean, forfeiture? What does it mean, either of you?
Well, that's not one of the highlights for me from the bill, I have to say. I mean, I think one of the things that I really liked that he talked about was the hostile environment, which was really created by George Osborne back in 2015, where the taxation changes were brought in. It was about trying to suppress the expansion of the private rented sector and increase home ownership. And in fact, the Labour Party want to increase home ownership from 64% to 70%. That's a real problem, I think, because we've got a huge shortage of supply. We've got 15 people per property, you know, when it comes to applicants, and none of what's in the Renters' Rights Bill, as it's called, is going to help that. Yeah, the main issue, I think, is going to be the abolition of Section 21. Right. I don't think there's a lot of point in us fighting that, actually,
Why?
Nana, because there's a political consensus around it. I mean, I think there's a lot of nonsense around no-fault eviction. No eviction is no fault. 25% of NRLA members issued a Section...
The
National Residential Landlords Association members issued a Section 21 in the last year. And of those, they were either issued because of rent arrears, damage to the property, antisocial behaviour, or because the landlords were selling. So they were, you know, it wasn't that they were no fault.
So why are they bothering with this, Julie? Why are they coming up with this thing with no fault eviction? Surely they should just leave Section 21 there. Why are they taking that out?
The reason why they're taking it out is because in today's society, again, it's no longer fit for purpose, really. I don't like the term no-fault eviction. I like the term no-ground eviction, because the opposite is Section 8, where you've got different grounds of either breach or landlord wants the property back. So I prefer no-ground eviction. But no landlord will ever evict a good tenant.
No, exactly.
That doesn't make good business sense at the end of the day. So if you've got a tenant that gets on with the neighbours, looks after the house and pays the rent, why are you evicting them?
On time, exactly.
There's no reason. So there's usually something behind it. And as Richard has said, rent arrears or antisocial behaviour. And the reason why Section 21 is used so much is because the court system is so much smoother. There's no hearings normally, so it's a lot quicker to get your property back in the grand scheme of things.
But you point out to something very important, that the court system is not fit for purpose. So even with all this legislation, there's nobody there to actually manage it.
We've lost the pledge around court reform that we did have with the previous government. They said that we won't abolish Section 21 no-fault evictions until at least 18 months into the process, and we will want to report on how the courts are functioning and whether they're managing. Now,
are this government doing that, or they're not?
They're not, no. That's a big problem, yes, yeah.
So you know about this, the rights bill that they're calling now. What are your thoughts on that? Because the previous government had said, we'll give you 18 months before we'll actually start initiating this.
I agree with the framing of no grounds eviction, and that a good landlord will not want to evict a good tenant. But there are cases, for example, where we see what the landlords do is they bait and switch. So they think, OK, the person who is renting my flat is probably not going to be able to afford the maximum rent increase, which I think I can get given the current rent increases. So I'm going to tell them that I'm going to sell the house, and instead I'm just going to get a new renter in. And the councils really do not have the capacity to investigate whether that happens or not. It is practically quite difficult, because that person could say, oh, I'm evicting you because I want to have my relative come and stay in the flat, and they just have whoever in. And I'm not accept...
So what? It's their house. Look, if you're staying in my house and I need more money, and they've messed up the economy so much that interest rates have gone up 5% and pushed my rent up, my mortgage up.
So average buy-to-let mortgages from 2014 to 2020 have been steadily falling by 2%. Rents, on the other hand, they used to increase by 2%. Now they are increasing by 9% every year. Our salaries are not increasing at the same...
But interest rates...
It's profiteering.
That's irrelevant.
It's pure profiteering.
It's not profiteering.
You obviously don't know. Landlords are losing money hand over fist. The interest rates have gone up to about 5%. So if you were paying, say, 500, suddenly you're paying, say, 900. So you're paying almost double. You have to put the rent up. I'm not going to put somebody in my house and pay for my mortgage whilst they're in it.
Private renters are paying 38% of their income is going towards rent. Those who have mortgages pay 21% of their income going towards rent.
Well, then they need to get a mortgage.
Let me make a point that we haven't focused on. We make a big assumption that it's just small landlords that have one or two properties. The reality, my practical experience in London, I've known large landlords owned by insurance companies, 1,300 flats in a block, and they use exactly this, no-fault evictions, to increase rents, to move people on so that they can have short-term renters in, completely killed a community or killing a community that's there. So it's not just about small landlords. So I do believe there has to be some change. Large landlords like that, just completely exploiting
you put your
the law.
legislation and target it at people who've got more than such and such.
Quite possibly.
You know, when you suddenly own this many properties, then you're not allowed to do that, this and that. But to target everybody with that same brush, and honestly, what you've just said there, the way you've painted landlords, it's just not true. No, most landlords are...
I'm not saying most landlords.
Most landlords only have, like, one property.
Yes, that's true. It's about 70%, I think, who just have one property or more. And I really want to refute the idea of landlords profiteering. My mortgage costs have gone up by 72% in the last year, and on average, I put rents up by £100. Now, that nowhere near covers the increase in mortgage costs.
The biggest solution is house building. That's what we need.
Absolutely, it's about supply.
Sorting out immigration as well.
Yes, absolutely.
No amount of houses. If
you have 150,000 skilled workers gap in the building industry.
Yeah, and we've loads economically inactive who are of working age. Get people back into work.
Get them back into work, get them building houses.
Building houses...
Briefly, last word to you, Julie.
Building houses isn't going to solve the issue of landlords evicting tenants for what you're classing as profiteering, because ultimately, all the legislation that keeps being brought in is costing landlords money.
Yeah.
Gas safety, electricity, all of that costs landlords money.
It's not even... Most landlords are leaving the market because it's not profitable at all. But listen, what are your thoughts? GBNews.com/your say. Thank you so much to Stella Chantakedu, Simon Danchuk, Ricardo Blanco, and also Judy Ford. 3 times I got it right. 3 times.
Right. Becoming an expert.
You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online, and on digital radio. Coming up, Nana's Niggle, my monologue. 15,000 small boat migrants have crossed the English Channel illegally this year. But first, here are your headlines with Tamsin.
Nana, thank you. Here are the headlines at 3:33. The NHS says most of its IT systems are now coming back online after yesterday's global outage, though some are still reporting issues. But those heading off on holiday are being warned to expect disruption still. Flight delays are persisting as airports and other businesses slowly get back online as thousands of families start their summer holidays. The glitches were caused by a security update deployed by a company called CrowdStrike, which affected users of Microsoft's Windows software. A yacht carrying a group of migrants has been seized in the English Channel as they attempted to cross illegally from France. Footage obtained exclusively by GB News shows the small 18-foot yacht being towed into Dover's harbour by the Border Force. It comes as hundreds of other small boat migrants launch from the beaches of northern France on what's been another busy day for crossings. In the US, reports suggest Nancy Pelosi has told colleagues she'd prefer a competitive process to find a replacement for President Biden if he drops out. The former House Speaker is understood to have pushed for an open primary instead of directly nominating Vice President Kamala Harris. That could see several candidates from within the Democratic Party compete for the chance to face Donald Trump, with just 107 days until the election. It comes as President Biden faces growing pressure to stand aside amid dwindling poll ratings. And clouds and cooler weather are back this weekend after yesterday's sweltering conditions brought the hottest day of the year so far. But heavy rain and bursts of thunder are to hit Wales and southwest of England today. But don't worry, some good news on the way from meteorologists. They say warm weather could be back just in time for the end of July. Not that long to wait. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, I'm Tamsin Roberts. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
36 minutes after 3 o'clock. Welcome. Still to come, Marion Kay's former Conservative MP will be in the political hot seat to shine a light on the future of the Tory party in my political spotlight. That's if there is one. But next, Dr. Rennie Hunderkamp will join me to discuss the latest medical breakthrough, potential life-extending drugs. Bring them here.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, it's certainly been an unsettled start to the weekend, but the good news is it is going to be turning brighter from Sunday. And the reason for this unsettled start is because we have this waving frontal feature draped across western parts of the UK, and this is slowly moving its way eastwards. And this is bringing a fair amount of rain across the west, which is slowly moving towards the northeast of the country. Still could see some heavy downpours on this rain into the evening as it does so. But generally it is turning drier. Still a fair amount of cloud around though, particularly across central and southern parts of the UK, where it'll still be feeling quite mild. But where it starts to turn clearer across Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland, it's going to be feeling a little bit cooler. Now, to start Sunday morning, pretty cloudy across the south and across central areas. A few drips and drabs of rain and drizzle. But as that cloud clears, it will be turning brighter, particularly across parts of the west and parts of Wales. Still a little bit cloudy across Northern Ireland and a few showers starting to feed in across western parts of Scotland. But on the whole, it is generally turning drier away from the Northern Isles, where they'll see quite a damp start, and that rain will continue to clear its way northeastwards through Sunday morning. But on the whole, a much drier, brighter day, and generally some sunny spells breaking through that cloud through the morning. A bit of a different story across Northern Ireland. We'll start to see cloud thicken and it will turn quite damp into the afternoon too. But on the whole, a much fresher feeling day with some sunny spells, some slightly cooler temperatures, but still feeling warm where you do catch the sunshine. As we progress into the evening, though, that rain that hits Northern Ireland into the afternoon will start to feed into western parts of Scotland. Still a few showers here in the far northwest of Scotland too. But on the whole, another dry night, plenty of clear spells where we'll be feeling a little bit fresher than of late too. Quite a changeable week ahead with some slightly cooler temperatures, but temperatures are on the rise, and where you catch the sunshine, it will still be warm.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly, you've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. This is GB News. We are Britain's, I was about to say election channel, that's gone. Britain's news channel. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome on board. Right, now this is fascinating. A new drug which could extend your lifespan by 25%. Now, scientists at Imperial College experimented with mice, and you can see that the untreated mice on the right, if you have a look, if you can see this on TV, otherwise on radio, check out gbnews.com and have a look at the show there. They're experiencing hair loss, grey patches and weight gain. Look at them. While the others on the left look sleek and thin, on average live for an extra 35 weeks. My God. Joining me now, GP and medical writer, Dr. Rennie Hunderkamp. Renee.
OK, where to start with this? There's so many angles. I mean, I'll start with, I'm always interested in any scientific developments, and this one suggests that it might be able to stop people getting cancer. So that could be a good thing.
Wow.
So basically, this interleukin-11 is what we call a cytokine, which runs around in the blood, and it is a bit pro-inflammatory, so it causes inflammation. Yeah. Also does other important things as well, and this is where I'll come back to that, I have some issues. But if they block this cytokine with an antibody, the theory is that you don't have inflammation, and so you don't develop the cancer that comes from constant inflammation, your joints don't age, your hair doesn't fall out, all of those things. Now, there's a few things to think. It's very rare that the human body produces something that we just don't need at all. This particular cytokine, we used to think it was important in platelet formation. That's been sort of debunked now. We think it isn't anymore. That use has been defunct. But it is still very important for women who are going to have children because it actually prepares the blastocyst and the lining of the womb for proper implantation.
When you've had them, though. Yeah, I've had them.
Exactly. So it also is important in stopping your body breaking down fat and getting rid of it completely, so you end up like a skeleton, adipogenesis. It has other roles in terms of blood cancers and inflammation. So I think it is an important cytokine, and I think we don't know enough about this yet to say that just removing it from people will make them live forever. So I think we need a lot more trials, and we need to know what the long-term effects are. 35 weeks might be long in a mouse's life, but it's not very long in our life.
But you said that the mouse, on average, the comparison for the age of the mouse...
55.
Was 55?
Yeah, because obviously mice don't live for very long compared to us.
So that's a lot.
It is, but it's all extrapolation, isn't it? And often things that work in mice don't work in humans. They just don't translate. Most things don't translate. It's the odd few that do. The other thing I have as a problem with this is ethically, what do we do with everyone when they start living forever?
Well, if they're healthy and it keeps them young and fit, you saw those mice on the left, they had good hair, and they weren't fat, then they could be useful, maybe build houses, I don't know, something.
Well, they could be useful, but we're not very good at making the economically inactive who are healthy work right now, are we? So I wonder if they're going to be inclined to do that when they're 55, 60, 70.
Well, you can make it a condition. You can have this drug as long as you work.
So, you know, we do have a problem. We do need more babies, that's for sure. I'm not sure we need more old people. And I don't think that there is a place in the world for us to live forever. We have a span, we have a lifespan, don't we?
No, Renee.
But surely you agree with me, surely you do agree with me, that if we actually all kept ourselves well when we were younger, eating non-ultra-processed food, exercising and keeping ourselves healthy, we would live a nice, healthy, long life.
Well, where do you draw the line then? Because that means that pretty much any drug that helps you or prolongs your life, you're saying, well, no, you just go with what's meant to happen. And I think, no, when new technology comes along, new drugs to expand and improve life, take them.
Do you?
Both hands.
But we need to know what the side effects are, because we don't know that.
Yeah, well,
and there could be side effects.
Some people might be willing to experiment on this one. Well, I think I probably can. If they need
Nana Dials, the researchers.
I'll do it. That one I'm interested in. Dr. Renee, when are you back? Are you back on Saturday 5 tonight?
I am.
Lovely.
Thank you very much. Yes, you can see me at 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, Renee Honderkamp, Dr. Renee Honderkamp. She'll be there on the Saturday 5. Thank you so much. She's an NHS doctor and a broadcaster. Right, next, former Conservative MP Miriam Cates will be in the political hot seat to shine a light on the future of the Tory party in my political spotlight.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
A new report suggests that Prince Harry is lonely in California and he's considering returning to Britain despite a seismic falling out with his father and his brother.
But the question we're asking this morning is whether Meghan would come with her Prince Charming or whether Harry would perhaps be more welcome here if he came solo.
Like Kinsey, we'll go to Kinsey Schofield live now in LA. Kinsey, we've got lots of time to talk about this, to speculate this. We've got about 6 minutes or so to talk. But what's behind all of this? Where are these thoughts coming from?
They're coming from royal author Hugo Vickers, and I don't know if you're familiar with Mr. Vickers, but he's written over 30 books about the British royal family. And he told The Sun that Prince Harry will ultimately return to the UK with his tail between his legs. He described the Duke of Sussex as angry and says Harry is genuinely petrified of losing his wife, Meghan Markle. When asked his predictions for where Harry and Meghan will be in the next 20 years, Vickers told The son, I think he'll come home, explaining, I think Harry will come home. And if he comes home, we must be very nice to him because he won't particularly want to. He's quite angry, suggesting that he would be coming home solo. Vickers also said that Prince Harry looks slightly petrified of Meghan Markle and that King Charles has left the door wide open for Harry's return if and when he does decide to come back.
I can only imagine the culture shock that Prince Harry has faced arriving there. This is a kid that has grown up in castles.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions.
That raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return.
And a few surprises along the way.
Might be cold in this studio.
That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, 47 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome on board. Now we're live on TV, online and on digital radio. And it's time now for this week's Political Spotlight. And joining me to shine a light, it's former Conservative MP Miriam Cates. Now, following a monumental defeat in July, the general election, the battle for the new Tory leader is currently underway. You've got MP Suella Braverman. She's been forced to deny that she would defect to Reform UK if she loses. And there's loads of things still going on. So, Miriam, thank you so much, first of all, for joining me. You look fabulous, by the way. We're two blondes together.
I'm trying not to overheat.
Miriam, so what on earth is happening to the Tory party? It feels like, first of all, they sort of disintegrated, and now it feels like they're almost melting. So what's happening?
Well, I think there is a battle for the soul of the party, and obviously who becomes the next leader is absolutely crucial in terms of whether or not the party can recover from this defeat, whether or not potentially the Conservative Party could go on to win the next election. I know that sounds rather incredible at the moment. Labour have won this enormous victory, this enormous majority, but actually the Labour vote didn't go up hardly at all this time. It was more that our vote just went so drastically down. So I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility to win next time, but we have to get the right leader, and we have to get someone who really understands what went wrong. And I think there are two schools of thought within the party at the moment. There's one school of thought that says, well, we just fell out with each other, we weren't competent enough, COVID got in the way. And then there's another school of thought that says we just didn't deliver on our promises. The priorities of the people who voted for us were reducing immigration. We utterly failed on that. People wanted us to stop the kind of woke takeover of schools and institutions. We didn't. And I think those are the kind of two schools of thought about what went wrong. And so, of course, who becomes the leader will very much determine what comes next and whether we can actually get our voters back next time. But it's not going to be an easy process. It's not going to be a pretty process. But I think that's inevitable. We do need to have frank and open discussions about what went wrong. And frankly, what does it mean to be a Conservative Party in 2024?
Me, I was a Conservative. I voted Conservative the previous time. Before that, I voted Labour. I've even voted Liberal Democrat. I've voted for anyone who's saying the right things. But to me, listening to the Tory party, there was too much infighting. So whatever they were saying was lost within that. And I think that's quite clear. And I'm concerned that they'll spend way too much time navel-gazing. So who do you think should lead the party, and how long do you think it should take for them to sort of stop looking at themselves and start looking out towards the rest of the country?
Well, I'm not going to say who I want to be leader because honestly, I don't actually know yet. I think the only person who's officially declared is Priti Patel, and I am just an ordinary member now. I'll get a vote at the end of the process, but it's not up to me who gets to the final two. But just on your comment about the disagreements within the party, I mean, you're completely right. Of course, voters don't want to hear disagreements, but fundamentally, the cause of those disagreements is that the parliamentary party is deeply split between some MPs who are traditional Conservatives and some who are Liberals and more close to Liberal Democrats in many policies. And I don't think you can paper over those cracks. And I don't think that we want to paper over those cracks anymore, because actually those cracks are the reason why we didn't deliver on things like immigration. So if you look at the Rwanda policy, for example, the reason why that didn't work and that planes didn't get off the ground is that the legislation that we put through Parliament wasn't strong enough. It didn't bring us out of the ECHR, or at least stop the ECHR from preventing us using our own border controls. And the reason for that was there were not enough Conservative MPs who would have voted for that. So on paper, we had this 80-seat majority, but in reality, there was not a majority of Conservative MPs because too many Conservative MPs voted against Conservative principles. So yeah, the outworking of that was people arguing in public, but the reality behind that was the party was split. So the challenge for the new leader is going to be to unite people who have not been united on these issues before, and I think that's probably almost impossible unless they can set out a proof that the reason that we lost the election was because we lost votes to Reform. We didn't lose votes to Labour, we didn't lose votes to the Liberal Democrat, we just lost our own voters. And the question is, how do we get those back? And without strong vision and a proper narrative about what went wrong, that's going to be very difficult.
I'm not sure that people will trust the Conservative Party again, though, because if we're talking about that, and you said it's because of disagreements within policy, but it wasn't just that, though. It was how many Home Secretaries were there? Was it, what, 8, I think? Education Secretaries, I think you had 10. How many Prime Ministers you had? You know what I mean? It was more the fact that there was so much going on that nothing got done, and I think people don't know whether even if you do select a leader this time, whether that person will still be leading the party within 6 months.
Yes, of course, the leadership changes didn't help. And as you say, the rapid turnover of ministers meant any good ideas did get lost and we didn't make progress. And that's absolutely true. But we also shouldn't forget the impact of COVID. And that was absolutely massive. And I don't think any government in the world has survived the election following COVID. And I think that's almost inevitable, because however well you managed that crisis or didn't, the truth is people were subjected to huge changes in their lives, massive inflation as a result of the money that we borrowed, disruption to the health service. And I think even if the government had managed the crisis better, we would still be facing those problems as countries around the world have. So I don't think we should forget that. I think it's unfair to judge the government, against a different 5-year period. But having said that, the fact that we then changed leaders so often was a problem, but also a symptom, as I've said, of the deep splits within the party, that unless we can find a way through, we are not going to be able to rebuild the party. And I think we lost so many voters to Reform because we moved away from our core Conservative values. They're not right-wing values, they're not extreme values, wanting to control immigration, all those kind of things, but we moved away from those, and that's why people don't trust us.
Well, listen, Miriam, it's going to be a pleasure because you've got to be on air doing Britain's Newsroom next week, so we look forward to you doing that. That's Miriam Cates, she's former Conservative MP. Coming up, my amazing panel, Lizzie Cundy and Matthew Larther, plus Nana's Niggle. It's all about the small boats.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, it's certainly been an unsettled start to the weekend, but the good news is it is going to be turning brighter from Sunday. And the reason for this unsettled start is because we have this waving frontal feature draped across western parts of the UK, and this is slowly moving its way eastwards. And this is bringing a fair amount of rain across the west, which is slowly moving towards the northeast of the country. Still could see some heavy downpours on this rain into the evening as it does so. But generally it is turning drier, still a fair amount of cloud around though, particularly across central and southern parts of the UK, where it'll still be feeling quite mild. But where it starts to turn clearer across Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland, it's going to be feeling a little bit cooler. Now, to start Sunday morning, pretty cloudy across the south and across central areas. A few drips and drabs of rain and drizzle. But as that cloud clears, it will be turning brighter, particularly across parts of the west and parts of Wales. Still a little bit cloudy across Northern Ireland and a few showers starting to feed in across western parts of Scotland. But on the whole, it is generally turning drier away from the Northern Isles, where they'll see quite a damp start, and that rain will continue to clear its way northeastwards through Sunday morning. But on the whole, a much drier, brighter day, and generally some sunny spells breaking through that cloud through the morning. A bit of a different story across Northern Ireland. We'll start to see cloud thicken, and it will turn quite damp into the afternoon too. But on the whole, a much fresher feeling day with some sunny spells, some slightly cooler temperatures, but still feeling warm where you do catch the sunshine. As we progress into the evening, though, that rain that hits Northern Ireland into the afternoon will start to feed into western parts of Scotland. Still a few showers here in the far northwest of Scotland too. But on the whole, another dry night, plenty of clear spells. We'll be feeling a little bit fresher than of late too. Quite a changeable week ahead with some slightly cooler temperatures, but temperatures are on the rise, and where you catch the sunshine, it will still be warm.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Charles was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
I'm Charles. I won £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
She could have said stump.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
something practical could be done.
I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss my big opinion. Mark Meets and my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, it's 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is former Labour Party advisor Matthew Laza, and also broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. Now stay tuned, because for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, have we become too complacent about technology following yesterday's global IT outage? Are we becoming over-reliant? Are we just taking it all for granted? Then, for my difficult conversations, I'm joined by former Apprentice star Jamel Artigas. She found herself homeless and abandoned in London, wondering if she would ever survive. You will not want to miss that. She's doing incredibly well. Then, in clickbait, Nigel Farage defends flying to the US 2 weeks after becoming Clacton MP whilst getting grilled by the newsagent's host Emily Maitlis.
And is that the sense you've got, that he's having a tough time right now?
He nearly died.
Do you think he's having a tough time right now?
He nearly died.
No flies on her. But before we get started, let's get your latest news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, thank you and good afternoon. The top stories: passengers continue to face disruption at airports as airlines struggle from the fallout from yesterday's global IT outage. Flight delays are persisting as airports and other businesses slowly get back online. It comes as thousands of families start their holidays as schools break up for the summer. Banks, supermarkets, most GP surgeries and even major TV and radio broadcasters were among the many others who were also knocked offline yesterday. The glitches were caused by a security update deployed by a company called CrowdStrike, which affected users of Microsoft Windows software. In other news, a yacht has been seized in the English Channel carrying a group of migrants trying to cross illegally from France. Footage obtained exclusively by GB News shows the 18-foot yacht as it towed into Dover's harbour by the border force. Our producer counted 86 migrants disembarking from the force's vessel. It comes as hundreds of other migrants launch from the beaches of northern France in small boats, the third busy day of illegal crossings this week. Police in South Gloucestershire are appealing for help in the search for a prisoner who escaped from HMP Leyhill yesterday. Gary Rutham, who's 42 years old, was serving sentences for driving, robbery and burglary offences. He was last seen just before 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon and was wearing a dark Nike polo shirt, dark jogging bottoms and black trainers. Police say he should not be approached, and they're urging anyone with information to contact them or Crime Stoppers. Meanwhile, a man who escaped from a West London prison while being treated in hospital has been recaptured. Graham Gom, who's 63, had been on remand for burglary offences at Wormwood Scrubs, but he absconded on Thursday after being taken to Hammersmith Hospital. He was arrested in southwest London at around 8:30 this morning. In the United States, reports suggest Nancy Pelosi has told colleagues she'd prefer a competitive process to find a replacement for President Biden if he drops out. The former House Speaker is understood to have pushed for an open primary instead of directly nominating Vice President Kamala Harris. That could see several candidates from within the Democratic Party compete for the chance to face Donald Trump, with just 107 days until the election. It comes as President Biden faces growing pressure to stand aside amid dwindling poll ratings. In the UK, pay increases in the public sector could cost around £10 billion, which is believed to be more than the government had forecast. Independent pay review bodies are reportedly set to recommend pay rises of 5.5% for teachers and NHS staff. But schools and hospitals are unlikely to be able to meet the increase with their existing budgets without making cuts. It could represent a significant challenge for Rachel Reeves's first budget, after promising to clamp down on borrowing and ruling out a string of tax rises during the election campaign. The Home Secretary says violent disorder that erupted on the streets of Leeds was audacious criminality.
5 people have now been arrested in connection with the angry scenes in the Hare Hills area on Thursday. Vehicles could be seen on fire while a police car was overturned. The riots are believed to be linked to a case involving local children who were taken into care. Yvette Cooper says those responsible will be brought to justice.
Been talking to West Yorkshire police officers and also local community leaders about the action they're now taking in response to those unacceptable scenes of disorder and criminality that we saw last night. The community is working very closely together in response to what was a local child protection incident, but it's really important that the community can feel safe on the streets and also that the perpetrators feel the full force of the law.
Now in sport, 6-time world snooker champion Ray Reardon has died at the age of 91. The Welshman dominated the sport in the 1970s and was widely regarded as one of the greatest ever snooker players. Fellow snooker champion Jimmy White has paid tribute to his friend, describing him as a total class act. And highs of 26 or 27 degrees have been forecast for some parts of the UK next week, with the weather to improve for the start of the summer holidays. That's as clouds and cooler weather have returned this weekend after the hottest day of the year so far yesterday. The Met Office says temperatures reached 31.9 degrees in central London. However, heavy rain and bursts of thunder are forecast for Wales and southwest England today. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon. Just coming up to 7 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online, and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Immigration, immigration, immigration. Where are we going to put everyone? Location, location, location. This week, we hit the milestone of over 1,000 migrants crossing via the Channel in a week. Now, on Monday, there were 427. They crossed in 7 boats. On Thursday, 317 on 6 boats, and another 413 on 7 boats on Friday. Now, that's a total of 1,157, plus 85, I think, today. Sadly, in between that, we also heard of the death of migrants, and others were rescued. Amazingly, though, 1 boat was turned back in French waters. My God, at last. I can remember suggesting turning boats back a few years ago and being sent death threats and pictures of dead babies. My point was that people shouldn't get on the boats in the first place, and if those wishing to get here realise that if they attempting to cross via dinghy that they'll be promptly sent right back to where they started, it might deter them from risking A, their lives, and also B, funding the people smugglers, and who are the actual ones who really don't care about anything apart from money. Now, Labour have put forward the concept of a border command control to stop the boats. How effective that will be, I question. And Labour are also putting forward a new planning and infrastructure bill, which will, in their words, turbocharge building of houses and infrastructure. But what's the point of announcing house building programmes and say 1.5 million new homes over the Parliament if you don't tackle legal and illegal migration? Let's be honest, the Tories got us here, even if some of it was on the back of previous Labour policies. Both parties are culpable, but the Tories have been in power for the last 14 years, so they can't blame Labour for a lot of this mess. Social housing within the new developments under Labour will prioritise those with the greatest need. So does that mean that people already living here will be at the back of the queue behind refugees and asylum seekers? What a great incentive to encourage people to come here illegally. This year saw the highest rise in population since 1947. So, great idea to build more houses, but if you don't tackle immigration, no amount of ripping up planning laws and building more will ever be enough. But before we get stuck into the debates, here's what else is coming up today. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, have we become too complacent about technology? Following yesterday's global IT outage, are we becoming over-reliant? And what could future breaches mean for the individuals and our privacy? Then, so for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, have we become too complacent about technology? At 4:50, it's Royal Roundup time. Angela Levin will be here to give us the latest from behind the palace walls. On the menu, Obid Scobie, or Scabies as I like to call him, has sold the rights for both his royal books and it'll be turned into a TV series. Maybe we'll see something similar to The Crown soon. That's if you can be bothered to watch. And then at 5, it's this week's Difficult Conversations. Former Apprentice star Jamila Artigas will be here live. She was abandoned in London, rebuilt her life and is thriving as an online entrepreneur. All of that on the way. That is coming up in the next hour. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Send me your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. Right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy and also former Labour Party advisor Matthew Lala. Matthew Lars is looking very smart in that suit jacket, I must say. Very nice.
And the button's done up to the top.
Well, it's controversial.
My mother will be pleased.
Yeah, your mum likes it, but there's one particular gentleman who always emails in saying undo it, but let's hope he's not watching today.
Well, listen, if you are, gbnews.com/your say, and then we'll force him to do that. Right, Matthew, so...
Michelle Dewberry has undone it herself before now.
It's another show.
Matthew, yes, another show. So, Matthew, what do you think? Labour Party, I mean, they're talking about house building, lovely sounds, great optics, but the reality is their approach on immigration doesn't feel powerful enough, and it feels like building more houses might not really come to fruition or actually have any impact.
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody can do the maths, and you're absolutely right. If you continuously have immigration, both legal and illegal, at the level we've seen it recently, over the last couple of years, then those houses will just get soaked up by new arrivals. So we need to build more houses. Well, that's
the other thing as well, by new arrivals. The other point, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but the point was as well, by new arrivals. So this is the other thing, who will be at the front of the queue for these social houses?
Yeah, so I think there's two things you need to do. One of which is you need to make sure that housing is given fairly. So obviously some people in the most need may be recent migrants, but you need to ensure that those families who've been on their waiting list for a long time, those who are in unsatisfactory housing, we've seen some disgraceful cases over the last few years of the state of some of our housing stock with damp, etc. So we need to make sure the local families who need houses are prioritised and that they're not just soaked up by new arrivals, which is actually something that Labour talked about when Gordon Brown was Prime Minister. But on migration...
But Gordon Brown isn't Prime Minister now.
No, he's not, and we need to make sure, and the Labour government needs to be acutely aware that that there is an issue, a potentially big issue here. Right. One thing we need to do, though, is we need to get the numbers of people arriving down. They're higher under the last year of the Tory government than they've been under any Labour government.
We are aware of that. Nobody's commending the Tories.
No.
But can I just say, Lizzie, this week we had people on the Bibby Stockholm complaining, going on hunger strike. Lucky they have food and people are giving them food and they can eat food, at the taxpayers' expense because they felt it was overcrowded. Now, we know that the quality of the accommodation is good. Maybe there's too many people on there, but at least be gracious and thankful that you have somewhere to live.
It's absolutely appalling. We've got our own veterans sleeping rough on the streets, which is absolutely shocking. And you know what? Keir Starmer isn't doing enough, Matthew. It's weak, poor, banging on about smashing the gangs yet
We
again.
need to do it, Lizzie.
He's got no costing, no deadlines, no targets. It's not enough. We've got 15,000 illegals to date this year. That's up 13% as it was last year, and the UK will most likely exceed the figure of 29,000. They keep on coming. Another 85 have come today,
That's
Matthew.
why we need to smash the
and
gangs,
Labour
Lizzie.
aren't strong enough. Sadly, what he's saying is all talk. It's
only had
not
10
enough.
days.
And he's so stupid. Not, saying about Rwanda not being the deterrent. That's like showing your hand. There is no deterrent
for these
to him.
criminals. I think he's quite an intelligent man, actually, to be fair to him. But I do think that it is utter madness to get rid of something that does have even the slightest deterrent effect without anything to replace it.
Well, you've got to make sure that you have a strategy in place, which is really tackling the gangs, bringing the border command together, bringing all the people we use for anti-terror, using anti-terror legislation, bringing together the police command, the Home Office. So people are actually working together on the gangs. We saw this week when he was talking to European leaders that they were making migration the #1 priority. Labour's not against offshore processing. It's just it was against the Rwanda scheme, which was ridiculously expensive white elephant. We need to work together so that we're processing people in Tunisia before they even arrive on our shores. It's too late once they've got here.
Keir Starmer slowly stepping back into the EU, don't you think?
No, absolutely not. This is about working with countries both inside and outside the EU to have a sensible migration strategy.
We've already given half a billion.
We've not given
France.
a penny extra to the French. The money announced this week was for the countries, particularly in North Africa, to try and stop people leaving where they are to enter to try and come here. And
there is research that shows that actually giving foreign aid to some of these countries actually makes people wealthier and then more likely to travel. So there is.
You need to target it on a specific thing.
So I don't think that we should be giving aid at all.
It's already costing us 3.9 billion. And that's 8.5 a day in hotels and so forth. And Labour, they can't keep saying, oh, it's worse than we thought. Sorry, they're the opposition. They knew exactly how bad
but listen, you're absolutely right. I totally agree with you. We need to get the scandal of hotels.
saying that on everything.
Well, I'll try not to say it today.
Yes.
We got the scandal of people in hotels, which has an impact on communities across the country. So Yvette Cooper's committed this week to getting that backlog dealt with and getting people out of hotels so they can be returned, so people can have their weddings, go on holidays to the hotels.
Immigration is ruining our country. Let me tell you, I was in Greece this week and watching what was happening in Leeds. I was absolutely ashamed.
Well, I don't know why that was happening. I think there's part of that was to do with some children that were taken from a home. Yeah, but I'm not so sure that that
why
was...
throw rocks and bricks at our police? It just shows lack of respect for our own laws and values in this country.
I don't know whether that's to do necessarily with migration.
I think we all agree that illegal migration is far too high, and legal migration has got higher since we left the EU. And one of the consequences of leaving the EU, which was sad, is that people who came from European countries, they went back. You know, often young people came to work, and most people went back. You had this kind of, revolving door. That hasn't happened because now we've got hundreds of thousands of people coming and staying because they're coming from further afield where you can't, you're not coming on your own. People are bringing their families, and that's why we need to clamp down.
I don't think that's. I think the reason what's happened with legal migration is that they just have not been strict and used a skill-based way of migrating. So you could have taken people from the EU or from wherever, it doesn't matter, but it should have been skills-based.
And dependence, it's bringing dependence is the issue.
Also, there shouldn't have been so generous with dependence, but I don't care where the people come from.
But it's bringing dependence.
Well, don't forget, it was Tony Blair that opened the floodgates for this. The Tory party have let us down.
They were from within the EU, and a lot of those people went home.
Labour need to be stronger. I think this isn't good enough.
As I said, it is both governments, Labour and Conservatives, I think, who both have got their, they've had their hand in that, and it's not great. But listen, what do you think? Stay tuned, get in touch. GBNews.com/your say, but there's still plenty of time now to grab your chance to win £30,000 in our Great British Giveaway. It is our biggest cash prize ever. Yes, what would you do with all that extra money? Here is how you could win it all.
Don't miss your chance to win our Super Summer Giveaway. With your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, it's Raw Roundup time. Angela Levin will be here to give us the latest from behind the Palace walls. But next, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, have we become too complacent about technology? I've got a pull up right now on X asking you that very question. Have we become too complacent about technology? Get in touch at gbnews.com/your say.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Now, time for the best part of the show, our Greatest Britain, where we share amazing people who do amazing things. And this week, that is Dr. Leo Cheng and Reverend Hilary Cheng.
Well, Dr. Chen regularly serves as a volunteer surgeon aboard the Mercy ships in West Africa and has recently served his 17th mission aboard the ships. He volunteers with his wife, Reverend Hilary Cheng, a Methodist minister in the UK.
Thank you for joining us, and what a privilege. So just briefly explain, what are Mercy ships?
Well, Mercy ship provide world-class surgery on the ship, and the ship then sail to these poorest of the poor country because there's no infrastructure to get road or rail there. And we offer free surgery and also education, training of medical staff, and partner with the local or the host nation to build up their surgical and anaesthetic services.
So how long have you been travelling West Africa? You go on all these different ships, different ports, and you treat the needy and the vulnerable. How long have you both been doing this?
20 years.
20 years?
Just over 20 years.
And you take the time to do this out of your own holiday from work. Why do you do it?
Well, because I'm indebted to the education in this country with all the qualification I get. And NHS is great. I love the NHS because without NHS, we see cases that we see in the low-income country. And I want to make use of my hand to help those people who have no way of helping themselves, because the tumours, the deformities, not just a physical ailment, but it's being ostracised and die early, commit suicide because they've been ostracised by their family.
When you're on the ship, you are seeing the very worst that the country can offer. I find it a great privilege to work alongside these people.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you've just tuned in, where have you been? It's just coming up to 23 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is Nana Akua on GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. It's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, have we become too complacent about technology? Yesterday's IT failure, described as the largest outage in history, has reignited the debate over whether the rapid shift to a digital world compromises individual privacy. Now, the outage caused by a botched software update from CrowdStrike brought global disruption affecting airports, healthcare services and businesses. It highlighted the risk of heavily digitised systems and the potential risks to privacy when a single point of failure can wreak such widespread havoc. And of course, this shows the critical need for robust contingency plans and better backup systems to mitigate such failures in the future, as more could lead to exposing us to significant privacy and security risks. It's beautiful, wasn't it? That was nice, wasn't it? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is the race to a digital world compromising individual privacy? Right, I'm joined now by Simon Danchuk, former MP, Megan Kumar, cybersecurity advisor at SciXL, Philip Ingram, former senior military intelligence officer, and Stella Chantakedu, former Labour advisor. Right, so let's get you up. Let's see. Right, where's everyone? I'm going to start with you. Simon Danchuk, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a real problem here. There's no doubt about it. And what was described by one cyber expert was that we have a digital monoculture. And by what he means is that we rely too heavily on too few companies to deliver these sorts of services. And so lots of organisations, banks, airlines, as we've seen, the NHS, all using just one or two companies, CrowdStrike, Microsoft, etc. And that creates a significant problem problem very quickly. And so the consequence of that is a major problem that we've seen. So what we need to do is perhaps have more companies that we're relying on instead of having too few. And the other solution, I think, just finally, is in terms of just relying on, eradicating cash, still using books, still using non-computerised systems. I think that's crucially important.
Well, let's bring on Megan Kumar. She's a cyber security expert. What do you think?
I think the point about excessive reliance on a select few suppliers is the right one. I think the problem, however, is much bigger than that. While we absolutely must make sure that we have a ecosystem that relies on multiple suppliers and all companies have a contingency plan with regard to their operations, their cybersecurity, as well as their legal exposure, it's equally important that we recognize that now pretty much all companies are technology companies. From healthcare to banking to social media, we're all sort of putting out a lot of personal data about our address, our personal choices, our political preferences, our customer behavior. We are constantly bleeding that kind of data, and those data are being collected by a whole variety of companies, which means that every company has to look at its technology exposure and resilience very carefully. It doesn't matter whether you're a tech company or not. If you are dependent on tech and if you are collecting data, you have to make sure that your resilience plan is absolutely unmatched.
OK, Philip Ingram, what's your view on this?
Well, the latest IT outage, there's been no evidence of any data lost, personal data. But when it comes to personal data and personal data exposure, I don't think people understand what they're exposing whenever they do anything on a modern device or put anything onto the internet or anything else. People know when to close the front door of the house. They know when to close the curtains in the room that they're in before they get up to different activities and all the rest of it, because they don't want people to look in. But they don't know what's happening when their smart television's listening into them, or their smart speakers listening into them, or their smart watch is listening into them, or they don't know what's happening and who's viewing what it is that they're putting on these devices. And that's a problem with society. And I think there needs to be greater education as to people so that they can get an understanding of their digital exposure. Because no matter how much people think they have closed things down into personal accounts with passwords and elsewhere, I can access it.
And I think that's a fair point that you make. Stella, what do you think of this?
I think that what this shows to us is how we cannot be over-reliant on things like AI to solve all of our problems, because very often these are very complex systems that require great expertise, which is very difficult and expensive to find. And so you have this situation where you have all of these systems all at once granting to a halt. And that does mean that we need to make sure that we don't think that there is always a smart trick with AI or some new technology to replace everyone suddenly, and then all of our problems are going to be solved. Socrates, the Greek philosopher, used to be really worried that because we're so over-reliant on taking notes, eventually our brains will stop working as much and our thought processing is going to become lazy. Now, of course, it was inevitable that we were going to take more notes and our brains did become lazy in the end. It did happen, so he was right to an extent. It is impossible to stop it. It is impossible to stop AI. It is impossible to stop our over-reliance on technology. But we can be more wise about this, and we can stop looking at it as a panacea.
But I want to come back to Mega, though, because is it, I mean, they put out an update that hadn't been tested, and so we are relying on these people to go through the due diligence that they should go through, and on this case they didn't. Should there be some sort of punishment for these people when they don't do the right thing? Because so far, literally, what's the punishment? There'll be people who have really lost out financially, airlines, and so on and so forth. What's the punishment?
Yeah, see, on your first point, though, usually these patches are first rolled out in the smaller zones of the companies, so smallest markets, precisely to test that everything is working, they're integrating well with other systems. So here, obviously, something went wrong. In terms of liability and penalty, there are several complicated layers to this, because as a provider, there are always sort of contractual terms that outline what the customer should expect in terms of the availability of the service, the reliability, its quality. So every contractor will go through their terms very, very carefully, and they really should. With regard to exact penalties, that will depend on where data regulators see as the core problem being. One is of a technology provider, but the problem at the user end can be from the intermediary. So if you're not able to access your data that you gave to NHS or to an airline, then there is an intermediary involved. So the liability could be put on one company, the core vendors here, but it could also be distributed across the intermediaries that are using the interface. So the liability issue is actually complicated, and in a way it underlines the fact that whether you are the vendor of a technology or its user, your resilience strategy has to be up to scratch, because the liability can fall on you, and the reputational cost obviously is huge.
Well, see, that's the problem, isn't it? When something goes wrong, like if I want to contact Facebook, there's certain ways you can do it, but sometimes you never get to speak to a human being, which is what you're after. But with this sort of thing, it's so intricate that actually everyone can escape liability. And Philip, this is an issue, that they can escape liability because of the intricate nature of all the connections within all the different networks that they're operating within.
Well, I don't think they're going to escape liability, because we've been able to identify exactly what went wrong with one patch and where it came from. And within 30 minutes of that going out and us getting the blue screen of death, the share price of the company dropped by 20%, and I suspect it's continued on its way down since then. We'll find that the board of directors, the shareholders, will hold the board of directors and the CEO to account. And all of the different companies that they provide this service to will go through their terms and conditions. They'll look at the contracts that they've got, and there will be some form of liability within those contracts, if they're properly written, for an impact on the service as it goes down. And they will start to individually sue the company. So I'll be surprised if CrowdStrike actually survives this.
Well, you say that. I've noticed Simon's nodding. We haven't got much time, but I think these people need to have a clause somewhere where they can escape any liability. Usually there's something somewhere that allows them to be offline for a certain amount of time or something, and they may have managed to get within that. But listen, thank you so much, Simon Danchuk, former MP, Megha Kumar, cybersecurity advisor, Philip Ingram, former senior military intelligence officer, and also Stella Chantakedu, political commentator. Thank you so much. Right, what do you think? Are you too over-reliant on technology? I should have asked you all that, actually. I didn't, but I think I know the answer. Can I just briefly ask Simon Danchuk, do you think we're too reliant on technology? Yes or no?
Yes, absolutely.
And Stella, same to you? Yes. I thought that was the answer. That's why I didn't ask. Right, this is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, we'll continue with the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, have we become too complacent about technology? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, Matthew and Lizzie, but still to come, my difficult conversations. Former Apprentice star, Gemelin Artigas. She'll be here live to tell us about her journey from rags to riches, literally. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you and good afternoon. The top stories. The NHS says most of its IT systems are now coming back online after yesterday's global outage, though some are still reporting issues. But those heading off on holiday being warned to expect disruption. Flight delays are persisting as airports and other businesses slowly get back online as thousands of families start their summer holidays. The glitches were caused by a security update deployed by a company called CrowdStrike, which affected users of Microsoft Windows software. A yacht carrying a group of migrants has been seized in the English Channel as they attempted to cross illegally from France. Footage obtained exclusively by GB News shows the small 18-foot yacht being towed into Dover's harbour by the Border Force. It comes as hundreds of other migrants launch from the beaches of northern France in small boats on what's been another busy day for crossings. In the US, reports suggest Nancy Pelosi has told colleagues she'd prefer a competitive process to find a replacement for President Biden if he drops out. The former House Speaker is understood to have pushed for an open primary instead of directly nominating Vice President Kamala Harris. That could see several candidates from within the Democratic Party compete for the chance to face Donald Trump with just 107 days until the election. It comes as President Biden faces growing pressure to stand aside amid dwindling poll ratings. And clouds and cooler weather are back this weekend after yesterday's sweltering conditions brought the hottest day of the year so far. However, heavy rain and bursts of thunder are forecast to hit Wales and southwest England today. But if you weren't able to get to the beach yesterday, some good news. Meteorologists say the warm weather could be back just in time for the end of July. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
34 minutes after 4 o'clock. Welcome. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Don't forget as well, you can download the GB News app. It is completely free. You can check out all the channel's programmes. But right, coming up, Royal Roundup time. Royal biographer Angela Levin will be live to give us the latest from behind the palace walls. But next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, have we become too complacent about technology? I've got a poll up right now on X asking you that very question.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, it's certainly been an unsettled start to the weekend, but the good news is it is going to be turning brighter from Sunday. And the reason for this unsettled start is because we have this waving frontal feature draped across western parts of the UK, and this is slowly moving its way eastwards. And this is bringing a fair amount of rain across the west, which is slowly moving towards the northeast of the country. Still could see some heavy downpours on this rain into the evening as it does so. But generally it is turning drier. Still a fair amount of cloud around though, particularly across central and southern parts of the UK, where it's still be feeling quite mild. But where it starts to turn clearer across Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland, it's going to be feeling a little bit cooler. Now, to start Sunday morning, pretty cloudy across the south and across central areas. A few drips and drabs of rain and drizzle. But as that cloud clears, it will be turning brighter, particularly across parts of the west and parts of Wales. Still a little bit cloudy across Northern Ireland and a few showers starting to feed in across western parts of Scotland. But on the whole, it is generally turning drier away from the Northern Isles, where they'll see quite a damp start, and that rain will continue to clear its way northeastwards through Sunday morning. But on the whole, a much drier, brighter day and generally some sunny spells breaking through that cloud through the morning. A bit of a different story across Northern Ireland. We'll start to see cloud thicken and it will turn quite damp into the afternoon too. But on the whole, a much fresher feeling day with some sunny spells, some slightly cooler temperatures, but still feeling warm where you do catch the sunshine. As we progress into the evening, though, that rain that hits Northern Ireland into the afternoon will start to feed into western parts of Scotland. Still a few showers here in the far northwest of Scotland too. But on the whole, another dry night, plenty of clear spells where we'll be feeling a little bit fresher than of late too. Quite a changeable week ahead with some slightly cooler temperatures, but temperatures are on the rise, and where you catch the sunshine, it will still be warm.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way.
Might be cold in this studio.
That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back if you've just tuned in. This is GB News, with Britain's news channel. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, have we become too complacent about technology? Yesterday we had the IT failure, the largest outage in history. Also, the question as to whether this rapid shift to a digital world compromises our individual privacy. The outage, which was caused by a botched software update from CrowdStrike, it brought global disruption affecting airports, healthcare services and businesses. I mean, it really does highlight how vulnerable we are and all the potential risks that are linked to that. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, have we become too complacent about technology? Well, joining me now on my panel, Lizzie Cundy and also Matthew Larser. Lizzie Cundy.
Well, I'll tell you about this digital hitch, because I was involved with it yesterday. Took me over 18 hours, actually, to get back from Mykonos. That normally takes 4 hours. It was hell. And luckily, I didn't have young children or my gran with me, because it was awful. 40 degrees heat. You couldn't get a drink because none of the tills worked. You couldn't get water. You know, it was absolutely awful. And then, you know, people want a cashless society. I mean, cash is king when you have, you know, what happened yesterday. And I literally sat on a plane for 3 hours, not moving. When it did start to move, the captain came out and said, I'm really sorry to say, but we're not sure when we'll be able to land.
Oh, God.
I mean, how frightening is that? And then he went on, which was very weird, to blame Brexit.
Hang on a minute.
And I was luckily sitting next to Belinda, who's on the show, Belinda's daughter. And we just couldn't believe it, so we had a conversation about Brexit. But this is how, when it goes wrong, it goes drastically wrong. Very frightening.
Matthew Larser.
So I think it reminds us that we need to keep cash. Yes, it's we know a lot of us like using our cards most of the time, but we need to keep cash as an option. People need to have the choice, and I think it's a salutary reminder for the younger generation, without wanting to sound like an oldie. That, you know, I mean, I asked one a millennial if they'd seen a checkbook the other day, and they certainly hadn't. But some of them claim they've never seen cash, which I think is a bit over the top.
Some of them have never seen records. Yeah, most of them haven't seen records. They don't know what to do with them.
Because records are coming trendy again, but cassettes are not.
It's coming back.
They've never seen a cassette.
VHSs.
Well, it's a worry because you carry everything on your mobile, and we use the apps.
Oh, yeah.
And they're not secure. I myself has been hacked, and it's just going on to a little link that then went on and took everything. And then other people they got in touch with, like Piers Morgan, his went, so he was blaming me, came from my phone. But it is really scary out there, and I think we've got to just think, you know, everyone wants, you know, to be taken over in the digital world. Actually, it could be quite frightening, and it's a security risk. Massively.
Yeah, and people land in, you know, I mean, a lot of young people go on holiday and they don't get any currency out. They think that they've got one of those online bank accounts which gives you free transactions abroad, so they just rely on that, and they try and get through the whole time abroad without ever getting the local currency in their hand. But it's not just cash. I was in the post office the other day, and we're literally queuing for 10 minutes because these two young women in front of me didn't know really what a stamp was. And so the poor guy, they were buying, and they weren't just buying one, they were buying 280 quid's worth, and they weren't quite sure. Do you have to put on each letter? Absolutely extraordinary.
But we've had numerous breaches of this. I mean, remember in the Facebook 2021, I mean, there was 500 million people got their hacked. It was so terrifying. And don't forget, we've had the post office Horizon scandal.
Yeah.
So many that it ruins lives, reputations.
We
and
need
financial.
to keep cash as a backup. As we can't go to fully cashless side. Politicians need to really realise that they're going to get into a lot of trouble if they try and kill cash.
Yeah, I don't think it's wise, especially under this. But listen, this show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our Great British Voices, their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. Let's go to Northamptonshire and speak to Miranda Richardson. Not the Miranda Richardson, she's our Miranda Richardson, the GB News Miranda Richardson. Miranda.
Hi, Nana.
Hiya.
You know, I saw an awful lot yesterday about cash is king, and obviously I work in hospitality, so, you know, everybody's saying, oh, cash is king, can't go out. That's great, but what you forget is all the systems we work off in order to open those tills are all technical. So it's all very well being able to go into a shop and pay cash for something, but if you can't physically ring it into the register because we're looking for cash and we haven't got cash and we haven't got a system up and running, there are elements of it that aren't going to work. Now, for some of it, obviously, we love to be able to use our smartphones. We all have apps. We are constantly going on that. That is life. That is what we do. I think one of the biggest issues, and I think your initial panel somebody on there said, it's got to start with education. It's got to start with us understanding what that little bit of kit in our hand does. What that tablet we hand to children to sit and watch does. People expect it. That's the way forward now. We know that. We wouldn't be where we were in the world. We wouldn't be talking and broadcasting like we do without it, But you've got to educate people a little bit more. So what happens? So many small market, like small cottage industries that are starting. Women, that have got baking companies and cake companies that are smaller and doing their thing. They all rely on technology to place their orders, to be able to get their equipment, to get their kit, and all of a sudden they can't do that. But they're at a loss to what to do next because they don't know, because we don't educate.
Well, and also because the power is in the hands of a very few, and it's like a game of Jenga. Take out that bit and it all collapses. Miranda, thank you very much. That's Miranda Richardson. She's there in Northampton. So lovely to talk to you. Right, so what do you think? gbnews.com/you'll say I will read some out. They're coming on the way. My difficult conversations. Former Apprentice star Gemelin Artigas will be live to give us her story about rags to riches. That's what she did. Next, Angela Levin will be here with the latest from behind the palace walls in my Royal Roundup.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Khloe Kardashian has come under fire after posting a picture of her 6-year-old daughter wearing a full face of makeup.
Yeah, the reality TV star said the youngster was participating in a dance recital and that wasn't an everyday occurrence.
So this morning we're asking, is it ever OK to let children wear makeup?
Well, joining us now is journalist Julie Cook. So, Julie, it's a child wearing full rouge, bright red lipstick, hair tied back, looking very, very stylised, very much, I think, like a young adult. Is this really the sort of thing we should be doing with small children?
Oh, I think it's absolutely fine. I mean, first of all, in Khloe Kardashian's case, it was a dance recital, so it was very much a kind of performance element to it. She said herself in her post, it wasn't something they do every day. She was taking part in a dance activity. So, I think she's vindicated on that front. But I've let my daughter play with makeup since she was 3. When she was 3, she showed a distinct interest in my makeup palettes, going through my stuff. She's 10 now, and while I don't let her wear a full face like a drag queen, I do let her wear, a bit of mascara on a weekend if she wants to. I don't see any harm in it.
Clearly, if you're a child of a Kardashian who's paid millions of dollars to endorse cosmetics, that's part of the fabric of their family. My concern, though, Julie, is putting those pictures on social media where people can see them. We live in an age now where, wrong-uns are scouring the internet all the time.
A lot of girls do enjoy putting makeup on. It's almost like a self-expression thing. It's like painting on a canvas. They're just trying to be a bit artistic. I don't think it's necessarily as sort of sinister as we're making out. And I think as long as you're not posting pictures everywhere or putting them at risk of harm, I don't see any danger.
The People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Well, good afternoon. This is GB News live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and there's always something going on in the royal household, and this week has been no different. And every Saturday, I like to give you a rundown, and who better to do so than royal biographer Angela Levin. Angela, what's happening? What's going on?
Well, one of the things I thought was very interesting is that Omid Scobie's written another book. It's fiction. I'm not saying that the other one was, but this one is definitely fiction. And he's sold the rights to the Universal TV, and I'm told it's going to be similar to The Crown. Now, what it is, it's about a press officer who brought in to make a fresh life into Buckingham Palace communications team, right? And they face the challenges and protocol of the royal household. So you can imagine there's going to be a lot of banging about the royal family. They're not going to be easy, and they're not going to be sensible. So that's what it is. He's writing it with a woman called Robin Benway, and that's the two of them that's done. I mean, I think it's a very good idea to change what he's doing, because he can't get help from the palace or anyone to write another biography or bring it up. But actually this might be dreadful, or it might be quite good fun.
But do you think that he's trying to bring in... what was that guy's name who was in charge of all the communications?
Yes, yes.
Do you think he's trying to do sort of a kind of mirror what happened with that guy?
Yes,
I can't remember his name. What was his name?
Yes, I can't remember it either. But I think he would find a lot of nastiness and difficulty with all the staff, all the aides who do their very best, and their way of behaving towards the royal family will be very different from what he feels about how people should be behaving as working for the royal family.
Do you think anyone will be interested in it?
I don't think they would be, actually. Yeah. I certainly wouldn't be interested, because it's fiction, and we know he doesn't like the royal family, and he will make it up, and he'll try and promote Meghan, he'll try and promote Harry, less so, but definitely Meghan. I'm not interested in that, really.
No, I don't think anybody else is.
Let me move on to King Charles, and this is interesting because he did the opening of Parliament, and he had to read out what the Prime Minister was saying for him. And the Prime Minister doesn't want hereditary peers. And King Charles didn't like that. He felt very uncomfortable about that, because most of us know that Starmer was against the royal family for a very long time, and he feels that he doesn't want him to do that with the monarchy. Now, we could be in dangerous water here, or on the other hand, it could be something that passes away. But it will be very interesting that that's the first thing that the Prime Minister has done in changing who goes to the...
And also, obviously, King Charles, it being a monarch is a hereditary thing. So anything that... If you're getting rid of things that are hereditary, it doesn't really... It's not really the right ethos, I think, for the country, and I'm wondering what the direction of travel is with that, because that's a big move to just suddenly do one person. He needs to hold a referendum or something like that, I think, if you're going to get rid of things that have been set in Parliament for many years.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why I'm telling you, because I think that it's very concerning. And if they're doing it 1, 2, 3, they seem in a terrible rush at the moment. It's good that they've started with loads to do, but actually you really have to think about these things carefully, and you have to think what Britain is really like and what we go for. I mean, I think it's different if a lot of the people in the House of Lords are sleeping all the time, because quite a few of them do sleep during the day. I don't think they should get their money. But to say that you can't have hereditary peers, I think is much more important than actually people have grasped so far.
Well, didn't he also try and ban people from going in there if they're over 80 or something?
Yes.
I mean, that's ageist, isn't it? That you can't do that.
Yes, I think that's terrible as well, because it depends what you like, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, some people are fantastic and phenomenal and into their 90s. We see that with all sorts of people now, and you can't just stop them because they are 80.
Because if it were any other environment where it's working, you'd be accused of ageism. That wouldn't fly. So I don't see why you should be able to do that.
Yep.
Anything else?
Yes, actually, because we have the lovely Prince George is 11 on Monday.
Oh, wow.
And so that's a really important age, I think. You become more like a teenager, and more like deciding what you like and what you don't like. I can tell you he likes spaghetti carbonara.
Oh, I love that.
And he was a very sensitive boy, but now he's come out of his shield, and he's actually enjoys sport in particular. We've seen him with his dad, and there he's very outward, and they're hugging each other and jumping up and down, and he's been very, very excited. And I think that now, you know, he saw Euros, and he's always there for Aston Villa, and I think it's very sweet that he is now very much a mini boy of his father. They get on brilliantly well, and I think it's very comforting for both of them in these difficult times.
Oh, that's lovely, isn't it?
And I think that's lovely. It's very sweet. Catherine, very quickly, all her earrings, they sold out. She got them for Wimbledon. And Charlotte's hairstyle is the main thing for any young girl.
Oh, we love that.
She wants her hair done like Charlotte.
Well, I'm going to get a wig like that, then why not? Well, listen, Angela Levin, thank you very much. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and digital radio. Still to come, my difficult conversations. Do not go anywhere.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, it's certainly been an unsettled start to the weekend, but the good news is it is going to be turning brighter from Sunday. And the reason for this unsettled start is because we have this waving frontal feature draped across western parts of the UK, and this is slowly moving its way eastwards. And this is bringing a fair amount of rain across the west, which is slowly moving towards the northeast of the country. Still could see some heavy downpours on this rain into the evening as it does so. But generally it is turning drier, still a fair amount of cloud around though, particularly across central and southern parts of the UK, where it'll still be feeling quite mild. But where it starts to turn clearer across Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland, it's going to be feeling a little bit cooler. Now, to start Sunday morning, pretty cloudy across the south and across central areas. A few drips and drabs of rain and drizzle. But as that cloud clears, it will be turning brighter, particularly across parts of the west and parts of Wales. Still a little bit cloudier across Northern Ireland and a few showers starting to feed in across western parts of Scotland. But on the whole, it is generally turning drier away from the Northern Isles, where they'll see quite a damp start, and that rain will continue to clear its way northeastwards through Sunday morning. But on the whole, a much drier, brighter day, and generally some sunny spells breaking through that cloud through the morning. A bit of a different story across Northern Ireland. We'll start to see cloud thicken, and it will turn quite damp into the afternoon too. But on the whole, a much fresher feeling day with some sunny spells, some slightly cooler temperatures, but still feeling warm where you do catch the sunshine. As we progress into the evening, though, that rain that hits Northern Ireland into the afternoon will start to feed into western parts of Scotland. Still a few showers here in the far northwest of Scotland too. But on the whole, another dry night, plenty of clear spells where we'll be feeling a little bit fresher than of late too. Quite a changeable week ahead with some slightly cooler temperatures, but temperatures are on the rise, and where you catch the sunshine, it will still be warm.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss your chance to win our Super Summer Giveaway. With your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. Which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us! Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions.
That raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return.
And a few surprises along the way.
Might be cold in this studio.
That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have said Storm.
you made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It's 5 o'clock. Welcome. And then for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. Coming up, joining me for difficult conversations, my guest, Gemma Artigas. Now, she went from being a mum with just 40 quid in her bank account to making 18k in 30 days. Yes. So for the great British debate this hour, I'm asking, is Rand Lorraine right to ban the 0-hour contracts? In clickbait.
Did he ask you to come?
There were people around him that thought it was the right thing that I came.
I thought you were giving all your time to Clacton now as its newest MP.
Yes, we'll watch more of that interview that everyone has an opinion of. That's, of course, Nigel Farage speaking to Emily Maitlis. But first, let's get your latest news.
Nana, thank you very much. The top stories. GPs and pharmacies say disruption from the global IT outage will continue over this weekend amid warnings of travel delays after flight cancellations. Flight delays are persisting as airports and other businesses slowly get back online. It comes as thousands of families start their holidays as schools break up for the summer. Banks, supermarkets, most GP surgeries and even major TV and radio broadcasters were among the many who were knocked offline yesterday. And the glitches were caused by a security update deployed by a company called CrowdStrike, which affected users of Microsoft Windows software. In other news, a yacht has been seized in the English Channel carrying a group of migrants trying to cross illegally from France. Footage obtained exclusively by GB News shows the 18-foot yacht as it towed into Dover's harbour by the border force. Our producer counted 86 migrants disembarking from the force's vessel. It comes as hundreds of other migrants launch from the beaches of northern France in small boats, the third busy day of illegal crossings this week. Police in South Gloucestershire are appealing for help in the search for a prisoner who escaped from HMP Leyhill yesterday. Gary Rutham, who's 42, was serving sentences for driving, robbery and burglary offences. He was last seen just before 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon and was wearing a dark Nike polo shirt, dark jogging bottoms and black trainers. Police say he should not be approached and anyone with information should contact them or Crime Stoppers. Meanwhile, a man who escaped from a West London prison while being treated in hospital has been recaptured. Graham Gom, who's 63, had been on remand for burglary offences at Wormwood Scrubs. but he absconded on Thursday after being taken to Hammersmith Hospital. He was arrested in southwest London at around 8:30 this morning. In the US, reports suggest Nancy Pelosi has told colleagues she'd prefer a competitive process to find a replacement for President Biden if he drops out. The former House Speaker is understood to have pushed for an open primary instead of directly nominating Vice President Kamala Harris. That could see several candidates from within the Democratic Party compete for the chance to face Donald Trump, with just 107 days until the election. It comes as President Biden faces growing pressure to stand aside amid dwindling poll ratings. Pay increases in the public sector could cost around £10 billion, which is believed to be more than the government had forecast. Independent pay review bodies are reportedly set to recommend pay rises of 5.5% for teachers and NHS staff. But schools and hospitals are unlikely to be able to meet the increase with their existing budgets without making cuts. It could represent a significant challenge for Rachel Reeves's first budget, after promising to clamp down on borrowing and ruling out a string of tax rises during the election campaign. The Home Secretary says violent disorder that erupted on the streets of Leeds was audacious criminality. 5 people have now been arrested in connection with the angry scenes in the Hare Hills area on Thursday. Vehicles could be seen on fire while a police car was overturned. And the riots are believed to be linked to a case involving local children who were taken into care. Yvette Cooper says those responsible will be brought to justice.
Been talking to West Yorkshire police officers and also local community leaders about the action they're now taking in response to those unacceptable scenes of disorder and criminality that we saw last night. The community is working very closely together in response to what was a local child protection incident, but it's really important that the community can feel safe on the streets and also that the perpetrators feel the full force of the law.
6th-time world snooker champion Ray Reardon has died at the age of 91. The Welshman dominated the sport in the 1970s and was widely regarded as one of the greatest ever snooker players. Fellow snooker champion Jimmy White has paid tribute to his friend, describing him as a total class act. And a blockbuster new film that's just rolled into cinemas looks set to top the summer box office.
They're combining. Go faster.
Let's ride.
Twisters took just shy of £26 million on its opening Friday, putting it almost on par with last year's big moneymaker Oppenheimer. That's raising hopes of another blockbuster summer, which would be a much-needed boost for cinemas. The big-budget disaster epic comes 28 years after the original and stars Glenn Powell and Britain's Daisy Edgar-Jones. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome aboard. It's just coming up to 7 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News, live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's broadcaster and author Lizzie Cundy and also former Labour Party advisor Matthew Laza. Still to come, my difficult conversations. Now today is with a former Apprentice star, Jamelin Artigas. Now after she was homeless and abandoned in London, my goodness, but she managed to rebuild her life and is thriving as an online entrepreneur. How does she do that? We'll hear her story very shortly. Then for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Angela Rayner right to ban zero-hour contracts? The government have pledged to make work pay with its workers' right package in a bid to ban exploitative practices and enhance employment rights. But is this actually banning zero-hour contracts the right decision? Then for clickbait, we'll watch more of Emily Maitlis and Nigel Farage and that interview. Send me your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. Well, it's now time for this week's Difficult Conversations, and joining me today is former Apprentice star Jamalene Artigas. Now, it hasn't been an easy ride. I mean, she looks fabulous, but she found herself homeless and abandoned in London, wondering if she would ever survive and if she could ever build a successful career. She went from being a mum with just £40 in her bank account to making £18,000 in just 30 days with online marketing. I'm joined by Jamila now. Wow. Come on, tell me the story. What happened? I want to hear a story.
How long do we have?
20 minutes each. No, talk to me. So talk to me about your story then. How come you ended up homeless in London?
Right, so I came to London at 16, actually. It was September, and I had a boyfriend at the time. He had his best friend here. 5 months down the line, I found out that he cheated on me. I decided to leave where we were staying, which was a very tiny accommodation in central London, in Good Street, like the tiniest. It was like five of us living in there. And yeah, and as I'm walking, obviously hot-headed Latina, I leave, and I told everybody I had somewhere to stay so that they didn't come and look for me, but I didn't. And I just didn't know where to go. So I remember thinking it was January. Yeah. It was one of the coldest January in London. The snow was up to my knee, and I didn't know what I was going to do. So yeah, I ended up just kind of like going around on the streets. Now I'm talking about cash is king. Thank God back then there was cash because I could find things on the road. That was the way I was eating and surviving.
How long were you sort of on the street?
2 weeks.
Never?
Yeah.
Did you not? Well, you said, I'm leaving, I'm out of here. Then you open the door, you see the snow. Maybe I'll go tomorrow. That would be me. I'd be like, I'm out of here, I've had enough. I'll do better than this. Then you go, hang on, no, I'll go tomorrow.
No, I never. I just started walking with my bags, and I think at one point of me walking down the street, of course, started raining. It's London. And I went down these arcs, and it's a story behind that, actually, about The Apprentice. I went on this arc, and that was the second that I stopped. And I remember looking up, and I just started crying. And I had no money. I had a very expensive jacket. I spent like £300 of my full budget, which was £800, but I was warm. I had no money. I had no phone. I had nothing. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to do now? And in that moment, I was 17. I don't know if I have a teenager now, and I cannot imagine him going through this situation. And I thought, okay, so I've got two options. I got to call my mom. She can pick me up. I go back home, and this is it. This is the end of my story. A failure. I didn't learn the language, which I came to do. My ex cheated on me, so I'd be alive.
Home would be where?
Venezuela.
Okay.
Then I remember I looked up at this building, and there was these people coming out of the building with the little briefcases. Back in the days, they had like briefcases, and they were like, they had suits, and they looked really smart. And I looked at them, and I said, you know what? No, this is not the end of my story. This is the beginning of my story. I don't know what's going to happen to me. I didn't call my mom. I never told her until I was about 23 years old. And I remember looking at the people in the building coming out and wiping my tears and saying, one day I'm going to be like them.
Yeah.
18 years later, I'm walking into that same building for the Apprentice auditions.
That same building?
Same building.
Wow.
Wearing a suit by force, because the Apprentice kind of says, the audition says you must wear business attire or a suit. And that was a 360 moment. And I know that was 18 years later.
Wow.
But that was the beginning, and obviously between those 18 years, a lot happened.
Well, go give us some of it. What happened?
I mean, I got run over by a motorcycle, which was brilliant, because I had a bed and food.
Really?
I was going to a interview. My ex got me with his dad. They used to work in a restaurant, and I remember getting off the bus. Back then, there was a double-decker bus, and they were open. There was no doors. Yeah. And instead of me going at the back of the bus, I got in the front. I was a little bit lethargic. I was cold. I was hungry. And as I'm going across the road, this motorcycle just literally crashed into me. I roll over. I wake up in the hospital, feeling great because I'm in a bed, and I haven't been in a bed in a few days. And I remember thinking, God, I hope I broke something so I can stay here.
Stay there longer.
But yeah, the doctor came in and said, it's a miracle. You roll over about 7-10 times, but nothing is broken. Well, you can go. And I'm like,
please let me stay.
But I got the job as a cleaner. So I used to clean the toilets, I used to wash the plates and clean the tables. I didn't speak English, so I couldn't take orders or anything like that. And yeah, and then I went on to doing beauty therapist, and I went on to doing events. And it was when I was 34, I just felt like, again, like I was in a point of my life where I've been living this crazy life, like chasing the money, working hard, trading my time for money, working a lot and never having money. By this point, I was a mom, and yeah, it was just difficult. So I thought, I just need to do something with my life. I was going through a massive spell of depression, you know, feeling suicidal. And I remember opening the laptop and I saw it. I loved The Apprentice. I always said, if I was to be on any show, it would be The Apprentice. And I applied. I had this idea for an events industry. They sent me a letter and they told me, yeah, we'd like to cast you and come to the casting. And when I'm walking down the street and I'm like, this is very familiar. Oh my God. And I just started crying. And I remember calling my partner at the time and I was like, I'm gonna be on The Apprentice. He's like, you just gone through the audition. It's like, you don't understand. I manifested this, I visualized this, and there I was. And then I made it to the show.
Yeah, really good. And of course, you were on the Bosch Beds one. With Bosch Beds, where he won, but you didn't. Where did you come in?
No. Karina won that year. The baker, they can bake. Yeah, he would have won. Lower Sugar loved him. They had a little bromance going on. I went on to week 7, but I think I was still struggling with my mental health.
Okay.
Even though that I obviously told everybody I was fine. So by week 7, I think there was not much fight in me left. So I was like, I'm happy to go home and have a large glass of wine.
You wanted to go home, you had enough.
I wanted to see my son. It's really tough, the process.
I can imagine.
It's tough, it's true. You wake up at 4, you are exhausted, you're living with a bunch of strangers that you've never met before. Some of them are very eccentric. It's just a lot.
So after The Apprentice, which obviously gave you some exposure, what did you do? What was your next move, and how did you come to become this entrepreneur online?
Right, so I think our season, it was one of the most controversial ones. There was a lot of press around because of the ethnic minority leaving the first 7 weeks, because of, obviously, there was some love inside the show. We wasn't allowed to be seen publicly, but we didn't care. We still went to every premiere, and we tell each other, are you going? And we'd be like, no. And then we're all there, and then we're like, oopsie. We get papped. So it was really, really out there. I don't know, Apprentice is not like Love Island, right? Love Island is like you're instant famous. Apprentice is very low-key. Majority of people don't really make a media career out of it. So our one was really, really big. So that meant we was getting invited to so many things, red carpet events. You know, everybody starts to know your name. The paparazzi starts to scream your name. They want to take pictures. I was leaving Harrods, I think it was Selfridges, and there was all this commotion, people trying to take pictures with me.
Wow.
They had to bring the security, take me from the back. I was like, this is crazy. I was with my family. They came here from Venezuela, so it was a very proud moment. But it was very surreal, but I knew this was a little wave that I was going to ride for 5-10 minutes, and that's it. So I made the most of it. But what it is that it's very delusional, because this wave went on for a little longer than 10-15 minutes once my story came out about being homeless and everything I did. And everybody wanted to hear me and know what I did in order for me to, you know, become that person that could apply for The Apprentice. So, yeah, I ended up, you know, talking in universities, becoming a transformational speaker. So it went on for a little longer, but then the pandemic happened. And I think I speak for the whole world, not even the nation, that everything just kind of like stopped, you know. And it was just, once everything started going back to normal, like people just didn't know who I was anymore. And even though I was trying to do the whole influencing thing, which I didn't like, it wasn't for me. Influencer lifestyle is not really what people think it is. Like, you don't get paid. I think most influencers out there are probably, you know, struggling financially. I was broke. I started to struggle financially. I started going into debt. And I was like, I can't keep doing this. I got to go back to work. So I was doing events. That's what I do. And I was very proud of what I did. But yeah, I used to still get recognized, even that I changed my hair color. So I don't think people meant to be mean, but it affects you. And this is why I always say to people, like, really be careful what words you have to say to somebody, because you don't know what that person is going through. So they would look at me and they'd be like, where did I know you from? And suddenly they'd be like, you're that girl from The Apprentice, aren't you? And I'd be like, yes. And they're like, oh, so you're doing this now? Oh. And almost like...
Yeah, so almost like you're sort of disappointed them because you're not doing something bigger. But you're doing quite big things. I mean, your social media, for example, that's something you've been doing, although you said you don't particularly like it, but it's worked quite well for you.
I've always been very open when it comes to social media, influencing and all of this stuff, OK? I feel like people showcase a lot of the good and not really what goes behind the scene and, like, the mental struggles. Because even doing that kind of thing, me being, for example, a brand ambassador and things like that, I was still struggling mentally. I was still struggling, feeling like, I don't know, I think everybody feels the same. It's like, it doesn't matter how much you do, you just feel like you're never doing enough. And I felt like, again, I went to The Apprentice and even I did well, but I didn't win it. And you just get in your head. And here I am, I'm a glorified waitress doing events. And it just, you start to go down this rabbit hole of self-doubts. And you see your son and you think, oh, God, I'm 37.
Only 37.
I thought I was going to have the world.
53.
You look amazing.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, but...
I'm old. I love being old. I actually really enjoy it.
You look incredible.
I can be cantankerous, which is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Listen, we're running out of time, so what are you doing very briefly?
Yes, so...
catch up with you
sorry, yeah, we can talk a lot about everything, but yeah, so I wanted to do something online because I felt like I was being judged every time I was on events, and I just stopped, and I just wanted to do something. But I went on a rabbit hole for seven months trying to figure it out. In August 2023, I found out a digital marketing course that came with reset rights. Never heard of it. It was huge in America. It was gone viral. Success leaves clue. So it taught me how to actually launch an online business as a complete beginner.
Wow. Yeah.
I didn't want to resell the same product because I never understood how it worked, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to give it a go. I'm just going to resell it like once or twice to make my investment back.
So what was it you were reselling, the course?
The course. Yeah. It's a done course. Yeah. It's done. You don't have to create anything. All the slides, everything is done. It's recorded. So I went on to kind of like softly promote it, ended up selling 3, and then before I knew it, my first month I've made £18,000 just from having £40 in my account. And then that was kind of like the eye-opener for me. Like, OK, online is the way forward until, obviously, we have a cyber attack.
Yeah, well, that puts a spanner in the works. Well, listen, it's really good to talk to you. I'm really wonderful hearing your story. If people want to check you out online, where do they go? What's your...
I'm on my Instagram, Gemelin Artigas. I'm on my DM, it's me. A lot of people always ask
struggling
me.
to spell that.
Gemelin Artigas.
See, when I asked you, have I said it right? I haven't, have I?
No, you have.
Gemelin Artigas. No, that was beautiful.
I say it in Spanish, though. Gemelin Artigas.
The Venezuelans always win the Miss World, so you know, she's a stunning lady.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in, Gemelin. It's lovely to talk to you. That is, of course, Gemelin Artigas. She's a former Apprentice star, but she's a star on social media. Right, and of course, we did discuss you know, suicide and things like that. So if you're affected by any of the things that we've discussed, you can contact the Samaritans on 116 123. Right, well, it's just coming up to 21 minutes past 5 o'clock, and there's plenty of time to grab a chance to win on our Great British giveaway. £30,000 could be yours. What would you do with the cash? Who knows? Here is how you could win.
Don't miss your chance to win our Super Summer Giveaway. With your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 866 690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
So good luck indeed. Well, still to come, clickbait. Nigel Farage's defence flying to the US 2 weeks after becoming Clacton MP. But next it's time for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, is Angela Rayner right to ban 0-hour contracts?
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
An employment tribunal has found that a senior lawyer telling a legal secretary that she looked nice created an intimidating environment and made her feel violated.
Well, she's won her sexual harassment suit, so is saying someone looks nice acceptable in the workplace anymore?
Well, joining us now to debate this is political commentator Christine Hamilton, who thinks it should be, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid, who thinks making comments like these are unnecessary. OK, Rebecca, why is it unnecessary to tell your colleague they look nice?
Well, how somebody looks at work shouldn't be particularly important or relevant, but I think my issue here is that it's used as a sort of dismissive way to make women feel silly for complaining about things. Like, oh, it's just saying you look nice, why does it matter? But we all know there are different ways of saying things, and if you are an older man in a position of power, looking a woman up and down and saying, oh, you look nice, in a lascivious tone, which, as far as we know, is quite possibly what happened, that's not acceptable, that's not workplace appropriate, and it would make somebody feel uncomfortable.
Christine, she's right, Rebecca, isn't she? It depends how it's said. If you've got someone who's sleazy saying, oh, you look nice, you're going to be a bit off-put, aren't you?
Yes, we don't know whether this was said in a lascivious tone or not, and as far as I can see this particular case, the boss went too far and he did a lot of other things as well. But what worries me is that the tribunal has ruled that just saying you look nice could be included as sexual harassment. Now, I think that is ridiculous.
Realistically, women don't make these accusations for fun. Women don't make these accusations to be difficult. They do it because they've been made to feel unsafe or unable to work in a certain place.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, 26 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News Live on TV, online and on digital radio. It's time now for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, is Angela Rayner right to ban 0-hour contracts? Now, Sir Keir Starmer and his new government have vowed to ban them and deliver a new living wage as part of a fresh deal for working people. Now, this comes in a bid to ban exploitative practices by companies. Now, some of them I agree with, but Angela Rayner is leading the charge on this.
Day one basic rights, a ban on 0-hour contracts, an end to fire and rehire, family-friendly working, strengthened sick pay, making it available to all workers, including the lowest earners, and from day one.
But Kemi Badenoch warned that the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, has been stitched up by the Labour Party.
I can tell the Right Honourable Lady that she has been stitched up. It is quite clear that the bills and policies from the King's speech she's just referenced have not been written by her, but by the Chancellor and the Chancellor's advisers. We all know this because we watched the member for Leeds West announce them in far more detail in her speech last week. And all the stuff the Secretary of State worked on in opposition like her new deal for workers has been taken off her and given to the business secretary. So I'm sorry to tell the Right Honourable Lady that her colleagues, the Prime Minister, the Chancellor and their many advisers have written a manifesto and made promises that are not deliverable, and they've hung them around her neck and said, Angie, you go out there and you sell it.
So, is Kemi right? For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Angela Rayner right to ban zero-hour contracts? Joining me now to debate this, political and business commentator Reem Ibrahim, journalist and commentator Rebecca Reid, and former leader of UKIP, Neil Hamilton. I'm going to start with you, Reem.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that banning zero-hour contract is probably one of the worst things you could do for the labour market at the moment. I think we should let businesses decide what kind of employment contracts they would like their employees to be employed on. We also know that 19% of those on zero-hour contracts are actually in full-time education. So if you're a young person, if you're a mother and you want to have children, it makes it much easier for you to then be able to have those flexible working arrangements. I myself was on a zero-hour contract when I was a student. If you take that away, you just take away the employment opportunities for millions of people across the country.
All right, let's go to Neil Hamilton.
Yeah, well, any self-employed person's on a zero-hours contract, and as a member of the bar, if I don't get any work, then I'm out of work, and I don't control the work that comes to me. So this is nothing unusual. If you ban zero-hour contracts, all you'll do is make work less flexible and more expensive, and that means there'll be fewer jobs and actually less well-paid jobs. Some people will benefit, but a lot of people will also lose out. That's what always happens under a Labour government. Of course, they screw the economy by making it more and more sclerotic, with more and more regulations and restrictions. And that means that the general public also suffers, because take the arrival of Uber in this country to free up the taxi market. That's been massively to the advantage of most people, because it means you can get a cheaper service and something which is more of it than there was before. And so if you ban zero-hours contract, you'll just do the same in various sectors of life where these flexibilities have produced new jobs, new industries and new services which people can buy.
Right, well let's ask, thank you for that. Rebecca Reid, are they right to ban zero-hour contracts?
They are, for two reasons. So two of the biggest problems that we have economically in this country is that we have 1.53 million people who are out of work, and we also have an ageing population and a falling birth rate. Now, this would help with both of those things. In terms of unemployment, a lot of the reason that people don't work is because if you get a zero-hours contract, it really messes up the benefit system. If you don't know how much you're going to earn in any given month, you don't know how many benefits you're entitled to, which means you can end up getting chucked off and getting nothing. You can get overpaid and then have to pay it back. So the benefit system does not work with zero-hours contracts. And it means that people don't take work full stop because they're too scared of the system failing them. Similarly, if you have a zero-hours contract, you don't have any maternity benefit, so you cannot afford to have a baby. In terms of the idea that it's good for mothers, that's just not true. You are not allowed to work and claim maternity and claim maternity benefit. So in that first year, at least, you're certainly not entitled to do both. So fundamentally, this is stopping people from getting back into work, and it's stopping people from having children. The two things we need people in this country to feel able to do right now.
But isn't the answer not to ban zero-hour contracts, but to change the benefit system if that doesn't work, because they actually have full control over that? But if you then put in that, there will be untold consequences for doing that, Reem. I can see your...
Well, I mean, this is just ridiculous. The idea that somehow it's better for those people to then take away those employment contracts altogether. Do you think that those flexible working arrangements would even exist if it wasn't for zero-hour contracts? Ultimately, if we want the country to, again, be more competitive, but again, for those specific people, we're talking about women that have children, mothers. We're talking about people that end up in flexible working arrangements because they've got other commitments. For those people, this kind of policy is just going to hurt them.
It does sound like...
Reem, do you have children?
I myself don't have children. No.
I do.
One thing I would say about having children, and you'll know this, Nana, you can't just pick up work like that. If somebody rings you in the morning on a Monday and says, can you take a shift this afternoon? If you have a child and they're not in full-time schooling, you cannot pick up work flexibly. Children fundamentally...
Well, why take away that choice? I mean, I'm sorry, but the idea that somehow then banning it for everybody is going to help those particular people is ridiculous. Let them choose. If a mother wants to enter into a zero-hour contract, she has the right to do so. If she doesn't have to. Why are you taking away, why do you want the government to take away their choice?
Final word to Rebecca Reid, quickly.
then the alternative is either they don't work at all, and that's useless for the economy, or they end up on benefits, also useless for the economy. What you need is to replace it, not just scrap it and do nothing. Replace it with a minimum level that you have to give somebody of hours on a regular schedule per week.
Final word, Neil Hamilton. I'm going to give Neil Hamilton 10 seconds, and I've got to go to the news.
Absolute nonsense, isn't it? The biggest problem that we got in this country today isn't what Rebecca's described, but that taking on people as employees is so fraught with difficulty and danger that there are so many jobs that we could create that aren't being created.
OK, Neil, I'm going to have to leave it there. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm sorry I had to cut it short, but I've got to get to the news. Neil Hamilton, Rebecca Reid and also Reem Ibrahim, thank you so much. Right, well, what do you think? GBNews.com/your say still to come. We'll continue with the Great British Debate this hour. Is Angela Rayner right to ban zero-hour contracts? Matthew and Lizzie will be joining me first. Let's get some news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, thank you. The top stories from the GB newsroom. Yesterday's IT outage affected nearly 8.5 million Microsoft devices, and that is according to the tech giant. The company added the figure represents less than 1% of all Windows machines, but it was enough to spark chaos at many of the world's airports. Flight delays are still persisting as airlines and other businesses slowly get back online in time for the summer holidays. Banks, supermarkets and even major TV and radio broadcasters were among the many others who were also knocked offline yesterday. NHS England is expecting disruption to GP services to continue into next week. A yacht carrying a group of migrants has been seized in the English Channel as they attempted to cross illegally from France. Footage obtained exclusively by GB News shows the small 18-foot yacht being towed into Dover's harbour by the Border Force. It comes as hundreds of other small boat migrants launch from the beaches of northern France on what's been another busy day for crossings. In the US, reports suggest Nancy Pelosi has told colleagues she'd prefer a competitive process to find a replacement for President Biden if he drops out. The former House Speaker is understood to have pushed for an open primary instead of directly nominating Vice President Kamala Harris. That could see several candidates from within the Democratic Party compete for the chance to face Donald Trump with just 107 days until the election. It comes as the number of Democrats calling on President Biden to stand aside reaches 35 amid dwindling poll numbers. And highs of around 27 degrees have been forecast for some parts of the UK next week, with the weather to improve for the start of the summer holidays. That's despite clouds and cooler weather returning this weekend after the hottest day of the year so far yesterday. The Met Office says temperatures reached nearly 32 degrees in central London as many escaped the city heat in favour of the beach. But the sunny skies were short-lived, with rain and thunder hitting parts of Wales and England today. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Tatiana. Coming up, Nigel Farage defends flying up to the US 2 weeks after becoming Clacton MP. But next, we continue with the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, is Angela Rayner right to ban zero-hour contracts?
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, it's certainly been an unsettled start to the weekend, but the good news is it is going to be turning brighter from Sunday. And the reason for this unsettled start is because we have this waving frontal feature draped across western parts of the UK, and this is slowly moving its way eastwards. And this is bringing a fair amount of rain across the west, which is slowly moving towards the northeast of the country. Still could see some heavy downpours on this rain into the evening as it does so. But generally it is turning drier. Still a fair amount of cloud around though, particularly across central and southern parts of the UK, where it'll still be feeling quite mild. But where it starts to turn clearer across Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland, it's going to be feeling a little bit cooler. Now, to start Sunday morning, pretty cloudy across the south and across central areas. A few drips and drabs of rain and drizzle. But as that cloud clears, it will be turning brighter, particularly across parts of the west and parts of Wales. Still a little bit cloudy across Northern Ireland and a few showers starting to feed in across western parts of Scotland. But on the whole, it is generally turning drier away from the Northern Isles, where they'll see quite a damp start, and that rain will continue to clear its way northeastwards through Sunday morning. But on the whole, a much drier, brighter day, and generally some sunny spells breaking through that cloud through the morning. A bit of a different story across Northern Ireland. We'll start to see cloud thicken, and it will turn quite damp into the afternoon too. But on the whole, a much fresher feeling day with some sunny spells, some slightly cooler temperatures, but still feeling warm where you do catch the sunshine. As we progress into the evening, though, that rain that hits Northern Ireland into the afternoon will start to feed into western parts of Scotland. Still a few showers here in the far northwest of Scotland too. But on the whole, another dry night, plenty of clear spells where we'll be feeling a little bit fresher than of late too. Quite a changeable week ahead with some slightly cooler temperatures, but temperatures are on the rise, and where you catch the sunshine, it will still be warm.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
39 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome. If you just tuned in, where have you been? 21 minutes to go. But still, Saturday 5 is up next. But it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is Angela Rayner right to ban zero-hour contracts? Joining me to discuss, I have broadcast from columnist Lizzie Cundy and also Labour Party advisor, former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. Matthew Larser.
So, look, I think there are some very sensible things in this bill. It's outrageous that the poorest workers haven't been given statutory sick pay before now. That's a good change. It's great that statutory sick pay is going to come in on day one. It's great the flexibility is going to be the choice for workers. And it's great that zero-hours contracts are going to be stamped down on because they've been abused. They're not going to be outlawed.
No,
there are cases when they could be used.
She's banning them. She said that.
Well, there are exceptions. I mean, I did when I worked for Ed Miliband, we did a business conference and somebody in the audience put their hands up and said, can I ask you about zero-hours contracts?
Yeah.
He went, yeah, sure. And he said, I run a business that recreates murders for the police. And, you know, they're the sort of... And he said, I can't actually predict when they're going to happen. So there are going to be circumstances where they're going to be allowed, but they shouldn't be abused, which is what they have been.
Well, abusing anything is wrong, but banning something that works and a lot of people like is frightening, actually.
Yeah,
Lizzie
let
Cundy.
companies decide, Matthew. I'm sick to death of Labour telling us also what to do, like we're in some nanny state. There's talk of a 4-day week without a drop in salary. I mean, how does
That's
that
not
work?
Labour policy.
Well, no, it doesn't work for productivity, for the economy. We've got to get people out there working. They're breeding a load of youngsters that are going to be hermits working from home. What if the digital clinch happens? What are they going to do then? Just stare at a wall? It's all
She's on
wrong.
fire today,
No,
Lizzie.
I think Labour should be looking...
Listen, you're right. We need to get people back into work, and that's why Labour's got its Back to Work plan, which was announced even before these employment rights.
Well, how about Labour look at those that don't want to work and want to take flexible benefits? Let's look at them.
That's why we need to get more people of working age into work, and it's why Liz Kendall's got a Back to Work
fraud
plan.
at the minute. I think Labour should be talking about that. Stop telling us what to do. Oh, Keir Starmer, I can't call out of work hours, you know.
Well, he's not going to work on a Friday after 6 o'clock.
Well, that's for religious reasons.
I'm surprised it's all King Charles it was a Friday.
It is because he has Shabbat with his family. His wife's Jewish on a Friday. Friday night. But obviously in an emergency, the Prime Minister will be available.
Well, you see,
you've got to have a Prime Minister human being.
Well, that's fine. He may well be, but the bottom line is this: that if you're saying we're going to ban this for you, but I'm going to do this at 6 o'clock. No. People should be allowed, just like he's choosing when he's not going to work in his work. People should be able to choose when they want to work.
Absolutely, and that's why flexibility. Flexible work is going to be the default.
But the outcome will be that businesses will go under if they can't.
And I have to say, whatever the reason, I think it's extraordinary that a Prime Minister would say, oh, it's Friday, I'm going to clock off now. For whatever reason, they're Prime Ministers. They've got to be there 24/7.
He clearly is available if needed, but it's Friday.
But then he shouldn't bother saying it. I don't know why he said it. Then if he's available, just be quiet. Do it quietly. Nobody will say anything. I mean, he works quite hard, but you don't need to put it in stone because that's when people get annoyed because they realise that they can't do that. This show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome some of our great British voices, their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. 3 of you there. Let's start with David from Watford. Is Angela Rayner right to ban zero-hour contracts?
No. I'll explain. I'm 66. My first job was working in a ladies' hairdressers at 14. All retail has always been 0 hours. They would phone up, they're busy, can you come in? Or are you available to work, say, between 9 and 12? And if we need you a bit longer, can you stay on? If you take away that option, there are a lot of people who cannot guarantee to work 8 to 12. They go to school, kids at school. They have to work 9 to 3. And so you have to have this ability, this flexibility to say, well, you will be under a contract, and the times will be, we'll call you or you'll call us, and if we can work together, you can. You cannot ban it completely.
All right, let's go to Brian. Brian Dugan, apparently in Edinburgh this time. You're in Solihull. Brian.
I'm in Solihull, Nana. I'm not in Edinburgh.
He's not in Edinburgh. Head will roll. Who wrote that? Go on. Go on. Anyway, go on, Brian.
They weren't on a zero-hour contract, whoever wrote that, I hope. No, look, flexibility, I think, is important. I think, look, in terms of zero-hour contracts, I think Matthew's correct to point out it's not a blanket ban. I don't think anyone's proposing that. It's a sensible approach to it. And I think that in the hospitality industry, for example, when employees can be dropped at a moment's notice because, well, trade is down or whatever, I think that putting fundamental rights in place for people like that, I think that's right and proper. I don't think that's reasonable.
Well, no, we're not talking about rights and giving people rights to do certain things. But she did say initially she was going to ban them. I heard her very clearly saying that. I mean, they may have started to water it down, but to even say that in one breath out loud, I think is utter craziness. Alex Metcalfe, you're there in Catterick. Alex.
Ultimately, I think it's the employment law. The employment law has become too restrictive. Because there are a number of regulations, to which employers have become bound to. As a result, employers have reacted to the ever-increasing burden of formal employment contracts, such as things as national insurance, maternity leave, sick pay, pension contributions, notice periods, and the inability, really, to part ways if a business decides to change direction. So I think the zero-hour contracts don't need to be abolished. But what I think needs to happen is less regulations of the employment market as a whole. So it's easier for employers to employ and to let go of employees. I mean, I'm thinking about industries with seasonal or unpredictable demands, such as hospitality and retail.
Alex, your audio is a bit. Alex, your audio, Alex,
because it's so
Alex. Your audio is really cracking.
Your audio's not
Oh, so your ears aren't working. No, your audio, we'll sort out your audio. We'd love to get you back on one time, but your audio's a bit choppy. But we did hear what you said. Thank you so much. Really good to talk to you. That's a brilliant Xander, Alex, also Brian Dugan and also David Balm. Right, coming up, my quickfire quiz, my panel and I are going to chat about stories that caught their eye. Next up is Clipmate. Nigel Farage defends flying to the US just 2 weeks after becoming an MP for Clacton. Stay tuned.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. every day from 6 a.m.
Meghan Markle has reportedly finished filming her new show for Netflix. It aims to celebrate the joys of cooking, gardening, entertaining and friendship.
Yeah, this comes after Prince Harry's Netflix documentary, The Heart of Invictus, failed to hit the right note with viewers missing out on the top 10 in the streaming charts.
So, will this next venture be a success? Well, joining us now is royal commentator Kinsey Schofield.
I know I've talked to the both of you about Meghan Markle potentially running for president, so this feels like a bit of a dud to go from Meghan Markle running for president to Meghan Markle's Netflix series about friendship and cooking. So she's wrapped this recent show. They rented a home near hers in Montecito so that as their cooking set. And they're saying that this is really make or break for Harry and Meghan when it comes to their Netflix contract.
You think, Kinsey, it's fair to say that Meghan Markle has proved to be commercially a bit of a damp squib? Even in America, her native homeland, she's kind of Oprah without the audience when it comes to the cooking. Also, is she kind of, do you think... They saw her as the golden ticket, didn't they, to unlimited revenue, unlimited audiences, and it just hasn't happened.
Look, I think Meghan is a beautiful woman, and I do think she's talented, but I think how you treat people is incredibly important. And not only was she rumored to have been cruel inside Kensington Palace with several bullying allegations, but here in the States, Archwell Productions, their audio section, their scripted section, they've gone through several employees. And I think it's a reflection on the way that people are treated there. And I think as a viewer, you might get that. You might feel that way, and maybe that is where the appeal has been lost.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. Right, now it's the... now this is time for clickbait. And this is a moment where presenter Emily Maitlis speaks to Nigel Farage.
Did he ask you to come?
There were people around him that thought it was the right thing that I came.
I thought you were giving all your time to Clacton now as its newest MP.
Well, I'm allowed to come to America on a trip like this, particularly in these circumstances.
But why did he need you?
Well, that's a matter for, his team to answer, not me. No, listen, it was right that I came.
Right for who?
It was the right thing to do. I have friends. I don't know whether you do or not. Maybe you don't. But I have friends, and when they're in having a tough time, it's right to go and support them.
And is that the sense you've got, that he's having a tough time right now?
He nearly died.
Do you think he's having a tough time right now?
He nearly died.
Yeah, I mean, what does she think's going on there? He nearly died, for goodness sake. Right, let's see what my panel make of that. Joining me, Lizzie Cundy and Matthew Laza. Lizzie Cundy.
Emily Maitlis has just showed herself up. And you know what? I'd say to Nigel Farage, if he's watching, don't bother with her. She's pathetic. She was trying to trip him up. And you know what? His friend did nearly die.
He did,
and if I nearly died, I'd hope you'd turn up.
Of course
for
I
me.
would, exactly.
It's disgraceful, disgusting, and she's an embarrassment, actually, and good for Nigel for
obviously Emily's not here to defend herself, but to be fair, that was a little bit cold and heartless, wasn't it?
Look, I don't think either of them covered themselves in glory. I think Emily's interview was peculiar.
In what way does Nigel?
Because I think that Nigel Farage has just been elected as the Member of Parliament for Clacton. You now represent 80,000 people. It's his 8th attempt to do it. He needs to be in Parliament for the King's speech.
Died.
Yeah, a week
He's
before.
Still looking after Clacton.
Hang on.
I think his friend had his family around him. It wasn't like his friend was rushing to hospital to see him, was
Keir
he?
Starmer, he's the MP, and yet he's been jetting all around the world.
This is the Prime Minister.
Right, so Nigel is the leader of his party.
Yes.
So what's the...
Keir Starmer was in the House of Commons for the King's speech. Nigel wasn't.
Yeah, but listen, Keir Starmer is not sitting in his constituency every day. He's even clocking off at 6 o'clock. You have no problem with that.
He needs to be in Parliament representing the people who clacked it.
Yeah, but
and if you're one of the millions of Reform voters, you would think that you'd turn up for the King's speech rather than go and make money as a media.
I think you're wrong. I think you're wrong, but it's time.
I think you're heartless, Matthew.
No, I think he's just wrong.
Actually,
right?
Nigel
No, he's
is
just
allowed
wrong.
to go away for the weekend.
It's time
He's still
for
looking after his
What did I tell you
constituency.
before when I said that when we run out of time for this, you
Yes,
stopped
I know,
talking
but I'm
and you couldn't
angry.
help yourself.
Matthew's made me
This is where we... Be quiet, please, Lizzie.
Sorry.
It's time for the quickfire quiz, the part of the show where I test my panel and some of the other stories hitting the headlines right now. Joining me, Lizzie Cundy. Your buzzer, please, Lizzie. Matthew Laza, your buzzer, please. Right, let's please go along. Question 1. Where did Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky meet Sir Keir Starmer in the historic engagement of the two leaders on Friday? Was it A, Downing Street, B, Chequers, or C, Blenheim Palace?
It was A, Downing Street on Friday, Blenheim Palace on Thursday.
I'm going to be different. I think it is, but I'll say Blenheim Palace.
It's Downing Street. You know the answer, yeah. Question 2. After his triumph at the Wimbledon last weekend, how many Grand Slam titles has Carlos Alcaraz won? Closest answer wins. Lizzie Cundy.
14.
Matthew Laza?
4.
4, he says. The answer is 4! Never have I wanted Matthew to win so much after what you did, Lizzie. Right, question 3. Which British broadcaster had to pause operations on Friday morning due to the global IT outage? Question.
Sky News.
Lizzie Cundy, press your buzzer.
GBNews.
No, we weren't affected at all. Don't be silly. Sky News, absolutely right.
I
knew that. True or false, the V&A appointed 4 Swifties to become Taylor Swift superfan advisors to the museum. True or false? Lizzie Cundy.
True.
It's true.
Matthew Laza?
It's true.
Well, I knew she couldn't win, so I let her go first.
Yeah, I know you did. You've been very generous.
It is true. Sadly, well done to Lizzie. Matthew Laza, sorry. Sadly, Lizzie did not win this
No,
time.
she didn't. Oh, nor last week.
I was robbed last week.
She was robbed.
By getting the answers wrong.
So, the question today, I've been talking with you regarding asking you lots of questions, and today I've been asking whether Angela Rayner was right to ban zero-hour contracts. According to our Twitter poll, 32% of you say yes. 68% of you say no. I would say I'm with them. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, my amazing panel. Broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. Thank you, Lizzie.
Thank you, Nana.
And also former Labour Party advisor Matthew Laza.
Thank you.
And a huge thank you to you at home for your company and for joining me today. Do not go anywhere, because up next is the Saturday 5. I'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, 3 o'clock. Be there, be square. I'll leave you with the weather. Enjoy.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon.